great. So Erin, and at the same time that we get to recognize Erin during her year of service, we're so proud of Erin and of all the teachers in Connecticut that she represents. I'd like to also take a moment and recognize our talent office under the direction of Dr. Sarah Barzy and Kim Watchell-Nelson, who make sure that we are well represented and that our Teacher of the Year process is inclusive and that we come up every year with such amazing representatives for the state of Connecticut. So Erin, thank you for coming before the board today. Erin is a teacher in Wallingford Public Schools, and I had the honor of visiting her classroom when she was announced as our state Teacher of the Year and was very impressed. Also, it was an early learning classroom, so it was very fun to be with our young learners for a little bit of time, and she's been recognized not only for being such a wonderful model of teachers in Connecticut, but also for her use of technology and her innovation in the classroom. So we're very proud and happy to have you here with the State Board today and to recognize you in this setting.
Oh, you want us to come up?
Why don't all of you, it's a little awkward today. Our setup is a little awkward today just because of all of the different kinds of participation that we have with our students participating today. So when anyone is participating, if they can come to the table that Sarah and Kim and Erin are at now, there's a microphone there, and that'll make it easier for everyone, including the members of the audience that are in an overflow room, to participate in the meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you first to the Commissioner for her support of the Teacher of the Year program and to the board. Kim may not say it, but I'll say it for her. Anything Kim jumps into, she jumps into 2 feet forward and with full passion. We had a recognized by that national network of state teachers of the year called NSTOY. If I had a dime for every time when I'm at a national meeting, we're recognized for the strong Teacher of the Year program that we run. Not just the Teacher of the Year program and the one-time honor at the Bushnell and so on, but the ongoing work that our state Teacher of the Year program does across the year. People may not know that we meet with the semifinalists 4 times a year. We have been very diligent and really want meaningful engagement with our State Teacher of the Year Council, both the 15 semifinalists, but also the council. So we work very closely, and we hear from other states that they don't enjoy that same type of relationship with their State Department of Education. So Kim has really embraced her role in the last 3 years, I think, 3 or 4 years, as our State Teacher of the Year liaison and coordinator, and then the deep relationship that we enjoy with the council. They've done meaningful work. They've done professional development across the year, sometimes sponsored by NSTOY, and it's because of NSTOY knowing how much Connecticut is committed to this Teacher of the Year program. So I'd like to publicly thank Kim and the Commissioner for the support from this office to be able to have such a program that we can be proud of. And then I'll let Kim have the honor of introducing Erin, who Kim gets very involved with our Teachers of the Year, so they develop very close relationships over the course of their year of recognition. So I'll turn it over to Kim.
Good morning, everyone. I just would love to have a moment to just tell you a little bit about the rigorous process that we do have here for the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year program. It is supported, of course, by our Department of Education and very much so by the Connecticut Council, our own Connecticut Teacher of the Year Council, who really does a lot of work to solicit sponsorships from not only our own department, but other organizations and individuals to provide not only a wonderful recognition event, but a lot of professional learning opportunities for our semifinalists, and that has even expanded to allowing our semifinalists and of course our State Teacher of the Year and finalists to invite other colleagues to some of those professional learning opportunities. So we're very excited about expanding the program to be much more inclusive about many of the fine teachers here in Connecticut. But this morning I'd like to introduce to you our 2018 Connecticut Teacher of the Year, Erin Berthold. Erin is a first-grade teacher at Cook Hill School in Wallingford, Connecticut, and under the leadership of Superintendent Dr. Sal Menzo and Principal Christine Friend, Erin has had the opportunity to lead from the classroom. She's been influential in creating a school culture that is proactive rather than reactive with the development of the PROUD program, a collaborative approach to setting expectations for good school behavior. She has engaged many non-English speaking families in reading aloud with their children through the creation of the Cook Hill Online Listening Center, which is a website dedicated to providing literacy resources and read aloud videos in both English and Spanish. Erin is also committed to maintaining a safe and comfortable school environment for all students. She took the initiative to become a member of her district-wide school safety committee and developed a lockdown plan for the district that has been shared with all faculty. While in Washington, D.C., as our Connecticut State Teacher of the Year just a couple of weeks ago, Erin had the opportunity to share her thoughts on school safety with Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos. Erin believes that educators have the responsibility to shape young lives. She creates learning opportunities which are both challenging and attainable, and recognizes that that can sometimes be a delicate balance. She's committed to making her classroom student-centered to promote divergent thinking and problem solving. Erin revels in her students' success and looks forward to a career where she can continue to contribute to that success. So once again, I'd like to introduce to you our 2018 Connecticut Teacher of the Year, Erin Berthold.
Hello, I just would like to say thank you for having me here today. I moved to Connecticut almost 11 years ago now because I wanted to be a teacher in Connecticut. So to be honored like this is just so amazing, and it's been a wonderful year. The learning experiences that were mentioned are, I feel like I thought I knew how to be a great teacher, but now I feel like, oh, now I know how to be a great teacher after learning so much this year. And I look forward to being able to share that with more teachers in my district and to help education in our state as much as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will now begin polling participation. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and I do have the newest technology, my sound clock, and in case it doesn't work, I do have the help of my colleague Malia Sive, who will keep the timer. So we have a very good system set up. I also want to remind you that we're being televised by CBN, so you need to use the microphone. They have assured me that we're all going to look thinner and better when they put the cameras on us, so don't feel shy about using the microphone appropriately and looking at the camera. So I'm going to call the first 3 names, so the other 2 get ready to come to the microphone. And the first one is Gino Lorico. The second person is Deborah Callahan. And the third, George Hernandez. So will Gino please approach the microphone? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Gino Lorico, and I'm the principal of Path Academy in Wyndham. We will be presenting letters and information and data today to the State Department of Education and you about Path Academy that will give you a more complete view of our students, our school, and our community. I am here to ask each of you to keep an open mind about our school and our charter until you have reviewed what Path has to say. I am the new principal at Path Academy. My first day was March 21st, and I wanted you to know that I came here to Path Academy on purpose. I have known about Path Academy since its inception, and have lived in the greater Wyndham region with my wife and 8 children since 1999. I care deeply about this school and the need for this school within this amazing and supportive community. We have made many changes since I've arrived, and we have planned many more. We have put into place a new attendance protocol, and we have seen an increase in student attendance by 36% since March 21st. The staff and I have approved a new schedule for next year that will allow an increase of an hour and a half of instruction daily. We will add on an advisory period, a weekly community meeting, and a service learning block as well. In the short time, we have created a climate of high expectations for attendance, academics, and discipline. Suspensions are down 75% since March 21st. We are planning amazing changes that will transform this learning community that include raising our academic standards, college coursework, and internships. Why should you believe me? I have had 31 years experience in public education, the last 17 as a principal. 10 years ago, in 2008, I founded a school. I was the founding principal of a school called Quinnebog Middle College in Danielson, Connecticut, that serves a very similar population of students that we have at PATH. At QMC, students take college classes as part of their high school program and have a 95% passing rate in those classes, which is higher than the college. One student graduated this spring with an associate's degree before her high school graduation ceremony. This is not talk. I've prepared a manuscript over the past 10 years while at QMC, and that explains what we did and why we did it, and that way at QMC. And we have developed a model that works with overaged and undercredited at-risk youth. In conclusion, please allow us to keep the charter for its 5th year so we can build upon these gains and that we have made recently and show you the way to meet the needs of these very special students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deborah Callahan?
Good morning. My name is Deborah Callahan, and I've been a Connecticut public school teacher since 1990. I've taught in the Wyndham Public School System for the majority of my career, and at PATH Academy for the last 3.5 years as a member of a certified AFT union-affiliated staff. Today I want to share some truths about the people of PATH and to encourage you to carefully consider the impact that the decision about the fate of PATH Academy will have. I'm a passionate educator. I believe in the power of learning. I believe that all students should feel significant and capable. The truth is that our students struggle with a great many things in their lives. They come to us with below grade level skills and a lack of confidence as learners. They come with family drama. They come with severe anxiety that has gone unaddressed in their previous schools. They come with histories of trauma and few successes to fall back on. They come sometimes without any trusted adults in their lives. But in our building, they find peace and a staff that will support them endlessly while holding high expectations and allowing them not to settle for less than their best. The recent actions of the State Board of Education have caused much stress, but also clarity and genuine gratitude for our school. As we risk losing our learning community, many people, mostly students, express their thoughts in letters to you. I hope that their letters cause you to pause and to look more deeply into the situation. I understand that mistakes were made, but the corrective actions that should be made to teach the adults responsible should not punish the innocent and vulnerable students who desperately need this opportunity to develop ideas, skills, and patterns of behavior to become confident and healthy people in this world. It is my sincere hope that you, as the educational leaders of our state, will acknowledge that PATH is continuing to evolve and moving in a positive direction. I ask that PATH be given the chance to turn this community of learners into the best it can possibly be. If we are forced to close, there is not another program within our region more prepared to meet our students' needs. The experiences of the past 4 years, the relationships that have been established, and the trust built enable us to move students to academically, socially, and emotionally strong places better than any other new or unfamiliar program could. The majority of our students are 18 years old and will not have other options, definitely nothing compared to PATH. Many of them have approached me in the last 2 weeks and said, "Miss, if this school shuts down, I'm going to drop out." For some, this means again. There are dozens of young and incredibly special people and to not serve them well now during this critical time period of their lives will lead to long lives of challenges and hardships. This reality would be extremely irresponsible of a public education system that needs to be committed to the success of every young person. In closing, I will leave you with the powerful words of one of our Path Academy students. This school lights a candle of hope for those who wander in the dark of confusion and failure. We students need that hope so we can succeed and later in life be an example of how this school truly changed us. Please don't snuff out that hope.
Thank you. George Hernandez.
Good morning, esteemed members of the State Board of Education, Commissioner Wetzel. My name is George Hernandez. I'm the chairperson of the Wyndham Charter School Corporation. I come today with a heavy heart and a clear mind. I submit to you for consideration this statement. I believe that I may be one of the few, if not the only person in these proceedings that has been involved since the charter was granted to the Wyndham community back in June of 2013. I had the opportunity, along with many community members at that time, to testify at the State Department of Education hearings in the Wyndham Tech High School back in June of 2013. As I stated at that time, and as I have numerous times since that, the granting of that charter for our community has been, and it is, a win-win situation. The chairperson at those proceedings came over to me and several members of the community and said at the time, and acknowledged this fact, and he said that the SDE was looking forward to this first and one-of-a-kind initiative to serve overage and unaccredited youth. Unfortunately, that was to a large extent, the last time that we as a community had such a visit or collaboration from the State Department of Education. The charter, fortunately, was granted, and OBP, along with many others in our community, set out to do the heavy lifting that the charter called for. The heavy lifts that we accept and presented and took on at that time were many. It called for OPP to start a 501c3 from scratch. It called for a building. It called for recruiting of staff. It called for literally building a building, which turned out to be a $6.2 million project. Much of this was new to OPP and blatantly, obviously, new to a brand new nonprofit entity, 501c3, the Wyndham Charter School Corporation. The heavy lifts are too many to mention here and to enumerate, but a simple sample of these are finding a suitable building, soliciting additional funding, finding and hiring architects, building contractors. This approximate $6.2 million lift was one of the things that has been accomplished. This was largely made possible by a $1 donation of the building, a decrepit, abandoned YMCA building in the heart of downtown Willimantic, and that was donated by Mary Lou DeVivo and her family. It was also made possible by a U.S. Department of Education grant. The submitting of an IRS 501c3 was a big lift. To start a nonprofit from scratch, as you very well know, is not an easy thing. The other big heavy lift was finding and hiring a brand new staff and administration. That was made largely possible by three very dedicated professionals: Deb Callahan, who you heard from, Chris Sheehan, and Beth Brunette. Yeah. At the end of the day, we are asking a very simple ask. We ask that you please allow us to re-engage and collaborate again with the State Department of Education to reboot the intent of the progressive charter that was granted by you back in 2013. Let's find common ground. Let's find ways to make a way to win-win situations. Together, Path Academy, OPP, the sending school districts, the State Department of Education, our commissioner, and our students, parents, and teachers can make a difference. We can find a way to make quality of life better for our overage, unaccredited youth, not worse. Simply, we ask for the opportunity to allow the Path Academy to finish the 5th year, and together we can successfully look forward to the renewal in 2019.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Michael Weatherall.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me the platform to speak to you today. My name is Michael Weatherall, State President of the Connecticut FFA Association, and I'm here today to recognize a true leader. Commissioner Wenzel has been a strong role model for not only our members, but also all students across the state of Connecticut. Her hard work and dedication to the success of education has been exemplary, and on that note, I would like to recognize her with the State FFA Leadership Award from our association and members.
Does anybody have a camera to take a picture? Diana, you have to.
I'm just getting a picture.
We don't have a timer, so.
No, we're on a time.
We got 2 minutes left.
What's next for you, Michael?
For me as education or for this
Yeah, what for education? What are you doing next?
One moment.
Great.
Is your dad report to us?
I just got my associate's degree in business administration from Quinebaug Valley Community College, and I'm continuing my education throughout this year at QVCC and continuing to UConn after. All of my teammates as well on the state board that we have are going to UConn as well.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for the award. Thank you so much for coming to the meeting. The next 3 people participating are Aaron Ayalon, Angela Lopez, and Liz Howard.
Good morning. My name is Aram Ayalon. I'm a professor in education in Central Connecticut State University, and also a former board member for 6 years in New Britain Public Schools. And last October, we organized a conference in Central. It's called Beyond Monolingualism, where Commissioner Wenzel and board member Lopez participated. And so some of us who organized that conference thought it might be timely 7 months later to do a follow-up and see if we can further promote bilingual education in Connecticut. As you know, and my colleagues will also tell you, we have the highest achievement gap in the country. And I just looked at recent research and found that actually the gap between affluent districts and poor districts and minority districts increases from 3rd grade to 8th grade. The higher the grade level, the higher the gap. Also, the research that I just looked at the last 2 decades. So the gap in the last 2 decades also has been going up. So it's not like achievement gap is something there that stays. It changes. And unfortunately, again, in that database, we are, again, number 1, unfortunately, in the achievement gap. So I thought of thinking of what can we do to decrease this gap. I think the case of the importance of bilingual education can be shown in New Britain, where while I was also a board member, 4 years ago, at that time, the superintendent abolished bilingual education, as well as abolished the dual language school in Loretto. And so I just looked at the data from February 2018 about the achievement of the schools in New Britain, and New Britain scores went 2 points down, and De Laredo 4 points, comparing to previous years. So we can see that one contributing factor would be probably the conversion from bilingual education to English-only grammar program that still is there in New Britain. If you think of an example of the achievement gap, if you look at Plainville, that is really on the border, 2 miles down the road, their scores on the math and language arts is 75%, 35% higher than New Britain. So I have several suggestions to do a follow-up. I think we need to create a permanent task force here with all the stakeholders that will bring together and talk about how to implement issues of bilingual education, yearly events that celebrate and promote best practices, and finally, I think the board simply, I think this should be on a regular basis, should be something in the agenda. How do we promote bilingual education? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Angela Lopez.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board. My name is Angela Lopez Velasquez. I'm a faculty member at Southern Connecticut State University, and English language learners are a population that are very close to my heart, being me one of them. So I'm here to speak a little bit about the teacher shortage, which is actually a big contributing factor for the achievement gap of language learners in Connecticut, as my colleague Aram was talking about. So ESL and bilingual teacher shortages are not new to the state of Connecticut. These are areas that have been declared areas of shortages for many years. But as the population of language learners in our state continues to grow, schools are in dire need to fill ESL and bilingual education positions with high quality teachers. There are a number of circumstances that contribute to the shortage issue. So number one, in Connecticut, bilingual and ESL certification cannot be acquired alone. So these certifications have to be acquired as cross endorsements, which means that teachers have to go back to school after they have acquired a first certification. They have to go back to school to pursue another certification to become either bilingual or ESL teachers. And as you can imagine, that could be difficult, and it could be a financial burden for teachers. The second contributing factor is that for the first time in decades, the state of Connecticut, none of the higher education institutions in the state of Connecticut receive the OELA grants, and the OELA is the Office of English Language Acquisition. These were grants that provided funds for many teachers to go back to school to get those certifications. We don't have those grants anymore. And a third contributing factor is the fact that many retirements are looming in the horizon. According to the Connecticut State Department of Education, by 2020, 46% of our bilingual educators and 29% of our TESOL or ESL teachers will be eligible to retire. So this is going to be a even bigger gap in teachers for language learners. So in summary, I think our state really needs a more efficient way to increase the pool of high quality ESL and bilingual educators, and I would love for the board to be supportive on this. Thank you.
Since the topic is bilingual education, I'm going to say gracias. And I think the commissioner wanted to mention something.
Thank you for your advocacy in this area, Dr. Lopez, and I wanted to let you know as well that the governor has signed into law an act concerning minority teacher recruitment that includes a provision related to cross endorsements in shortage areas. So we will be in touch very shortly because we will want some expertise and advice on particularly how to implement this with regard to bilingual and TESOL. So the basic summary of the languages, Laura can jump in if I'm getting it a little wrong, is there is in Section 9, I believe, of the Minority Teacher Recruitment Law that the governor signed, the already certified Connecticut teachers will be able to cross-endorse into shortage areas through a demonstration of proficiency on the required academic assessment. So for most content areas, that's going to be Praxis 2. So for things like secondary math, secondary science, world language, that's a pretty easy one, and I think our team knows as of July 1 how to implement those. Some of the more complex certifications that are covered by our 10 shortage areas will be seeking expert advice. And so if you don't mind to make sure that Dr. Barzi has your contact information, that would be great. But we so appreciate your advocacy because we know our kids need TESOL and bilingual teachers, and we're committed to reducing the shortage area and the burden on the educators that want to serve our kids.
Wonderful. If I can just add very quickly, my colleague Liz Howard actually started, she's from the University of Connecticut, and she's going to speak right after.
Please, you know, we don't want to turn it into a dialogue.
Oh, yes, of course. She will probably mention what I wanted to mention.
Sarah, thank you so much. Liz Howard.
Good morning. I'm Liz Howard. I'm an associate professor of bilingual education at the University of Connecticut. And as my colleague Angela was alluding to, I'm also the chair of an advocacy organization or group called HEAL, Higher Education Advocates for Language Learners, which is a voluntary group that I initiated about 6 years ago to bring together State Department of Education folks and higher educators in the state to work to address issues related to English language learner education in the state. And today I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about a topic that's been my professional focus for 30 years, namely the education of English language learners and specifically dual language education. As Dr. Ayala mentioned, Connecticut has the largest achievement gap for English language learners of any state in the country. And I know that you share my concern about this chronic and sizable achievement gap and have made it a priority in your comprehensive 5-year plan. I believe that promoting dual language education is one approach that would help the state achieve the goal of educational parity for English language learners. Dual language is an educational approach that allows students to receive academic instruction through both English and another language for an extended period of time with the goals of promoting bilingualism and biliteracy, cross-cultural competence, and grade-level academic achievement. There's a robust research base comprising decades worth of studies that all point to the efficacy of this approach for English learners and other students. Most recently, a study published in 2017 found that English learners who were randomly assigned to dual language programs had significantly higher reading scores and were reclassified as fully English proficient faster than students in other programs. I want to underscore the importance of these findings. Because this study used random assignment, these are causal rather than simply correlational findings. The policy context in Connecticut is ripe for supporting the expansion of dual language education. First, the bilingual state statute mandates bilingual education when there are 20 or more students in the same building who speak the same home language. Moreover, it directs districts to investigate the feasibility of dual language programs in particular in this situation. In addition, the state just passed the Seal of Biliteracy, meaning that it will recognize high school graduates who have demonstrated high levels of language and literacy ability in one or more languages other than English on their high school diploma. Despite the favorable research outcomes on dual language education and the favorable policy context, there are only a handful of dual language programs in the state, and only 5% of our English learners are currently enrolled in these programs. To promote the expansion of high-quality dual language education programs, I recommend that the state take the following actions. First, provide clear written guidance to districts to support dual language program development, such as that offered by Massachusetts. 2, provide financial and or technical support to districts, such as that offered by Utah, North Carolina, and New York. And 3, work with districts and institutions of higher education to generate creative solutions to the chronic shortage of bilingual teachers. And I'm very happy to hear about this new initiative with minority teacher recruitment. I'll end by saying that on July 31st, I'm hosting a dual language symposium at the University of Connecticut Law School. The goal is to bring together administrators, teacher leaders, policymakers, and dual language advocacy organizations to celebrate the success of existing dual language programs, brainstorm challenges and solutions, and increase awareness of resources to support dual language implementation in the state. I invite you all to join us.
Thank you. You can leave that information on the invitation with the staff so they can send it to you.
Copies of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next two speakers I'm going to call Melissa Hamill and Jalisa Smith.
morning. My daughter Jalissa is a 6th grader at the Thomaston Center School. Throughout her educational career in Thomaston, she has been subjected to bullying, harassment, and racial discrimination, not only by students, but also by staff. She's been hit, punched, kicked, called names such as a slave or the N-word. And this year, she's also had a school staff member targeting her. I've pleaded with the administration, as well as the Thomaston Board of Education, to implement changes, and I have hit barrier after barrier. Due to the lack of accountability and resources, my daughter is learning science and social studies, not by actually being taught, but by being handed assignments and learning on her own. This is due to the teacher of those subjects targeting my daughter. A locker search was conducted by this teacher, resulting in her being out of work for several weeks. It was an unwarranted locker search, and she didn't have permission. When I reported this to the superintendent, I did not get a response. But a newspaper reporter contacted the superintendent about a week later, and then the investigation started. I have also requested that the district transfer my daughter to a neighboring district where she can access the full resources to thrive for the remainder of her educational career in the least restrictive learning environment. The requested district also has a higher diversity rate. On May 23rd, I had a meeting with the superintendent where she attempted to bully and belittle myself, my mother, and my daughter, while she succeeded in being disrespectful. The superintendent first threatened that we would not have a meeting when I requested that my daughter be kept out and we meet privately first and then we incorporate my daughter. She said, "I'm running this meeting. It won't happen unless your daughter's involved." She continued to be very hostile, talking over me and being rude throughout the meeting until the point where she called my daughter a liar. I asked her if that is in fact what she said. She said, yes. Yes, I am calling your daughter a liar. This behavior coming from the superintendent of schools is incredibly unacceptable. Throughout the meeting, she was incredibly hostile, speaking over me, interrupting. Later on, the next day, I received the report of the incident that had happened the Monday prior. The principal stated in the report that my daughter did in fact report the incident, so the superintendent calling my daughter a liar was incorrect. We've lived in Thomaston for the majority of my daughter's life. The superintendent has told me we could either move or pay the out-of-district tuition. The district has failed my daughter, and I don't feel that I should have to uproot my family because they can't provide her the proper education. I've pleaded with them, the board, and now I'm here pleading with you as a mother trying to advocate for my daughter. Something needs to change in this district, not only for my daughter, but for the next child to follow in her footsteps.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jalissa would like to say something. Mr. Nesman, if you don't mind talking with the family, I didn't want to cut off the student if she's speaking.
She'd like to just say something.
Right.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jalissa Smith. I am a sixth grade student at Thomaston Center School. I get picked on almost daily because of my race. People make fun of my hair and my skin color. People have hit me, called me names like a slave or the N-word, made fun of my hair no matter how I wear it. It makes me not want to go to school. It makes me afraid of what is going to happen when I go. I tell teachers and the principal and they don't do anything. I don't want any other kids to feel the way I do. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you will meet with Daisy. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to call the next two speakers to the microphone. Brooke Myron and Michelle Bag.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brooke Myron. I live in Stratford. I have a 10-year-old daughter and I work at Stepping Stones Museum for Children. I am here today as a mom to tell you a story about how this petition in my hand, which I have copies for you, I represent 1,300 parents and children who are on this petition. Our concerns are about our Board of Education, Town Council, and state reps who have failed to address our concerns in forms of email, personal conversations, meetings, rallies, and petition. Everything is falling on deaf ears. This has resulted in a massive issue whose ramifications compound daily. We believe that one vote on May 14th has resegregated our elementary schools, denied families the right to school choice, and may potentially make students in classrooms relearn information that has already been taught to them. In February of 2018, our Board of Ed Finance Committee met and discussed reverting our neighborhood schools into neighborhood schools. Our superintendent, Janet Robinson, made suggestions that this would follow a 3-year study and it would begin with incoming kindergarten classrooms. We fast forward 3 months later and the Board of Education put it on a track to make this issue come to fruition in 3 months rather than 3 years. They voted to demagnetize our town's only magnet school, turning it back to a neighborhood school, and redraw the district lines to eliminate approximately 44% of the district's busing. We believe that the Board of Ed has violated Public Act 97-290 in 3 ways. 1, by demagnetizing the school that parents chose via lottery system, they took away the parents' school choice. 2, by demagnetizing the school in May, they denied the parents' school choice because all of the other intra-district magnet programs application processes were closed. They have sent hundreds of students back to their neighborhood schools, and the busing that they relied on is no longer going to be available to them. This also carries into our town's advanced learning program. They moved the program to a neighborhood that 70% of the children do not attend, thus eliminating the busing for this particular program. This issue is huge, and I know I can't cover it all in 3 minutes, but I do hope that you hear our concerns. We were able to go through the Board of Education budget and suggest reductions of 20% that would make up the costs and that would keep our school a magnet school, not redistrict students or lose any busing services for children that need it. We were flat out ignored. We emailed our Board of Education, Town Council, and state representatives with this. We hope that this board can put some sort of influence or help us in some way because we're just clearly out of options. My email address is listed on our public speaking sign-up sheet.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Mayor, thank you for your comments. Now, since this is a local magnet school, an intra-district magnet school that isn't part of a state plan, we don't have any direct authority, but the leader from our staff that deals with school choice is here, so I'm going to ask Mr. Peterson to step out as you exit to give you any information that may be helpful.
Great, thank you. And I'll leave these for you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Michelle back.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Back, and I'm an assistant professor with the University of Connecticut's NEAG School of Education. I'm here to speak with you briefly about our proposal for expanding our existing World Languages certification program to include Mandarin Chinese. A recent report by the State Department of Education outlined that world languages continues to be a critical shortage area in Connecticut. Yet the demand for skills in languages such as Mandarin Chinese is on the rise both here and across the country. Currently, Chinese is the 4th most taught language in the United States, with over 227,000 students enrolled in these courses. The state of Connecticut is no exception to this trend. Chinese courses are offered in K-12 schools across the state, in districts as varied as Glastonbury, Coventry, and Norwich. The University of Connecticut's Chinese language program already works with several of these courses on their curricula as part of UConn's Early College Experience program. Despite this interest, many Chinese language teaching positions go unfilled. A previous search on several teaching job sites, such as CT REAP and Connecticut Education Association, indicated several vacancies in Chinese language instruction in August, when most teachers had already found employment. To partially address these vacancies, several high schools and middle schools in the state employ native Chinese language instructors from China's Confucius Institute. While valuable for the knowledge they bring, these are temporary hires that would ideally be replaced by permanent Connecticut certified teachers. Yet, to the best of our knowledge, there is no post-secondary institution in the state that certifies in Chinese language education. Given the increasing interest in Chinese, combined with a shortage of qualified teachers and a lack of Connecticut institutions providing certification, there is a critical need for a teacher certification program in the language. The University of Connecticut's NEAG School of Education has a well-established program in world languages education. We prepare successful and sought-after teachers every year in French, Spanish, German, Italian, and Latin through our integrated bachelor's, master's, and post-collegiate certification programs. We work closely with our colleagues in the Department of Literatures, Cultures, and Languages to ensure that our candidates are prepared both in terms of language proficiency and for the particular challenges of teaching their target languages and cultures. Lastly, we are globally oriented, encouraging study abroad in the master's year so that students will gain an international perspective on education, as well as the rich linguistic and cultural knowledge that can only be achieved from a significant period of time spent abroad. It is for these reasons that we believe we are well positioned to certify in Chinese language education. I'm grateful to the Board of Education for allowing me the chance to speak this morning and hope that you will consider the proposed certification program in Mandarin Chinese language education. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you say thank you in Chinese?
谢谢.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Salpas Carrera.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sal Pasquarello, Superintendent of Schools in Danbury, Connecticut. I'm here to speak to an item that's on the agenda regarding the waiver. I appreciate the Commissioner's recommendation to the Board regarding the waiver. I know the 180 days is a standard, and some districts have more, but that is a standard for 180, and we take it very seriously when we do our scheduling and our calendar. The days before April vacation, on emergency days this year, we just had an inordinate amount of them, but we fully anticipated to take those days out of the April vacation if in fact that's what was going to happen. We just kept adding on to the end of the year until we were going to be able to revert back. We were fine until the microblast and the tornado hit us, which put us out of school for 3 days, and other districts around us even 5 and 6 days. When we make a decision about a snow day, we don't look at the amount of money that's saying that we don't have. We look at the safety of the youngsters, no matter how many days are left. And that's what I did after the April vacation when we were looking at the days that we needed for safety. I don't have to tell you, there's wires, there's downed trees, there were people that were homeless. It was really a mess for us. It still is a mess, as a matter of fact. So we're not able to make up those days. And the waiver turns out to be appreciated, but it's deferring the day to next year. So in essence, I need 180 days. We have 179. I have 12,000 students, 19 schools that have to make up another day. We have 3 other schools that closed for other reasons prior to the April vacation. They were due to breakages in the water main and other electrical problems. Those we had to make up, so they have 2 days to make up. But here's what happens in practicality. We have 1,700 employees. We have 7 unions. Now, when we replace about 100 people a year, teachers, I have to keep count if we're going to deduct the days, which teachers we deduct days from. Those teachers that are transferred from one school to another that are in the school that had the days, are they going to make up the days? Do I take their money? There's an increase in money in terms of their negotiated contract. Do I now pay the added? Now, all of these things can be worked out, but you can appreciate anybody's done any negotiation. It takes time and effort. And for me to create a calendar that's reasonable and something that we can depend on is somewhat daunting to me. So I'm asking you to do something, to think about. I mean, I open all these schools after July 1st. All my schools are open. We have about 4,000 or 5,000 students that do go to summer school. All the elementaries that are involved in this, the 3 middle schools, the high school, the alternative schools, all go to summer school. So if you're worried about hours, clocked hours, we're going to get there with the needy students. The gap people we're talking about, these are the kids that are there, that we're working with. So I ask you to reconsider that. If nothing else, the days after the April vacation that I had no alternative but to take the days, that one makeup of the 19 schools would be helpful. If you think the 3 other schools need to make it up, I could work out 3 staffs, but to do all schools with 1,700 employees with all of those idiosyncrasies is really problematic. So I ask you please to consider not only waiving the day, take their recommendation, but actually not having us defer those days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a minute left? Do I have any time left? I was going to say something about bilingual ed, but that's because I agree.
You can send it in writing.
The check's in the mail, right?
A friend of the board, Dr. Mr. Tom Stringfellow. Our reading list for today, right, Mr. Stringfellow?
Okay. Good morning, Tom Stringfellow from Manchester, Connecticut. This is my 14th visit here for front of the board. And, proud community member, just bringing in a different perspective. First, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Wenzel and her award, and congratulate the 2, I guess, outgoing student representatives, and wish them well in the college of their choices. And it's good to see diversity there. I think that's what's important to, in Connecticut, and I guess with the student presentation that's coming on, part of your agenda. I'm glad to see this diverse group of young people along with their advisor, and someone is listening at times. And I mean that, sincerely, that you can listen to new ideas. I know in education you've talked on a lot of things, like with languages, and I'll pass along an article from Time magazine that talked about why kids learn languages more easily than you do. That was the May 28th edition page of Time magazine, and I think learning languages are important too, but also with understanding, ELL, and I think with special education students too. I'm glad that the NPR radio has had a series on there on dealing with the issue of autism and other special programs or interviews from time to time. I think it's a very beneficial source, and I'm hoping today that the media will report on what the students have to say, and I'll start reporting the news, not censoring the news. I mean, it's not always controversial or sensational, but, real facts, if that's, get it out to the public that can't attend here. I also think about childhood poverty. I think in Inquiring News, there's a commentary by Marian Wright Elderman, Help Us Keep Dr. King's Promise Alive, that came out in their May 30th edition, etc. And I think we have to deal with all students. As I heard before, I was really appalled to hear with a young student from Thomason had to put up with this, racism and abhorrent behavior from a superintendent. I mean, it's so shocking that you had Brown versus Board of Education. It was like 64 years ago, and as I said, Linda Brown is deceased. I guess she died 2 or 3 months ago, and it's not right. So I'm hoping that you'll investigate that and do the right thing. And it's not a black thing you wouldn't understand. I think racism, sexism, any type of classism is abhorrent, and we should stand for it. And for whites on the sidelines, get your head out of the sand and let's work together as people. And because right now it's just an ugly situation. And I'll speak out on it because I've been a product of it, and I have been called the N-word too. And it does stay with you, even with my college education. I can still be another black suspect sometimes. I'm drafted casually if people don't really know me. I'm going to deal with 50th anniversary of Robert Kennedy, and it's a Fair Housing Act that's coming up in July, 50 years, I guess, 3 or 4 months after Dr. King's holiday. So what I'll end on is that we need to understand about veterans. There's a special that's coming on PBS or CPTV dealing with manufacturing, and today, in this morning's Current, mother of late Matthew Tirado is getting 11 years in prison for that, the front page story of this morning's Current, and I think justice has been done in that area. So I think you're doing a good job, and you'll hear from me, because as a former student, and even though I'm not a parent, I think you need to listen to all ideas, and seriously, press, start reporting the news, and make it a value. You are a fourth estate and you are important, but it's a two-way street with that. And whether you like it or not, I'll always be a critic of the media when I see that things are wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And I'm glad to see that what you're reading, I'm also reading. So, Mr. Orlando Rodriguez.
Good morning, Chairperson Lopez, Commissioner Wenzel, and members of the State Board of Education. My name is Orlando Rodriguez. I serve as a research and policy specialist for the Connecticut Education Association and as our chief economist. This is a good opportunity to correct a misconception about CEA. We are not anti-charter. In fact, the first charter school in Connecticut was Integrated Day Charter School in Norwich, and the founding legislation came from a collaboration between CEA and legislators. Furthermore, CEA has members in 2 other charter schools. We support well-run charters that spend taxpayer money to the full benefit of their students. CEA has often commented on the lack of financial accountability and transparency, specifically among charter management organizations, which are paid taxpayer money for services that are unnecessary. Sadly, the situation at Path Academy in our piece of the pie has proven our concerns to be justified. Separately, the proposed CMO contract between Domus and Stanford Academy, which is on your agenda for today, is more proof that there is insufficient financial accountability and transparency for CMO. This contract violates statutes that require the Department of Education to define allowable costs and to calculate per pupil service fees. If you take a look at the agreement for services, bottom of the page, page 5, section 3, the service fee is the pay salary of the CMO employee. It is not based on allowable costs, and it is not a per pupil fee, as is required by statute. The salary is decided by Domus, not the state, and no evidence is provided on how salaries claimed by Domus compare with other employers in the area. For the same reasons listed above, the proposed contract does not fulfill requirements by the auditors of public accounts. For these reasons, CEA opposes the proposed CMO contract between Stanford Charter Academy and Domus Kids. Undoubtedly, supporters of CMOs will argue that the situation at Path Academy is unique and not characteristic of other CMOs, but this is contrary to the facts here. As illustrated above, the calculation of service fees for the proposed contract between Stanford Academy and Domus violates statutes. Another charter in Stanford, Stanford Charter School for Excellence, is yet another example of insufficient accountability and transparency. This charter has a relationship with a CMO in New York City, but the nature of that relationship is not defined. It should interest the board that the Stanford Charter School for Excellence pays a 13% management fee. To whom and for what services? Almost done. The lack of academic gains and a nearly 100% chronic absentee rate at Stanford Academy is like what was found at Path Academy. The state paid over $1.6 million for Stanford Academy to educate 148 students. However, on any given day, only 85 students attend. The situation at both Path Academy and Stanford Academy has clearly shown that the charter model is ineffective at providing education services for students with difficult circumstances. We must not abandon these students. Instead, we must find a model for delivering education services that fit with their daily circumstances. Charters have failed.
Thank you. The last speaker for today, Gwen Samuel. I'm sorry, Gwen.
Good morning and happy summer, school board. Well, thank you for the greeting. That's right, we can talk to each other. We got work to do for our children. My name is Gwen Samuel, and I'm here in the space of a mom today. very specifically a black mom. You can see that by the visuals, but I want to talk in that lens. I'm also the founder and the president and founder of the Connecticut Parents Union. I want to start off by saying, as context, today there are an estimated 30,000 officers now in schools across America, up from roughly 100 in the 1970s. Although the stated purpose of these officers is to maintain a sense of safety, a very troubling consequence is greater arrest rates and referrals for minor disruptive behaviors, with especially harsh results for girls of color. According to the 2013-2014 data from the U.S. Department of Education, black girls are 2 to 6 times more likely to be referred to law enforcement on school grounds as white girls, and black girls are almost 4 times as likely to get arrested at school. Disparities affecting Latinas are especially severe in elementary school, where they are 2.7 times more likely to be arrested than young white girls. In light of this data, schools and districts must work to improve interactions between girls of color and school resource officers, striving to keep girls of color safe and supported in schools and reduce disproportionate rates of contact in the justice system. That is the context that I am here as a mom. My daughter had a fight. 2 girls wanted to jump her. I was notified from the school the day before that the girls wanted to jump her. The school said they tried to do a mediation. They couldn't resolve it, so they said they wanted to send the kids home. I agreed, because if you don't know how to keep the school safe, you separate, we regroup, and let's figure out a safety plan. That didn't happen. A fight occurred in the cafeteria in Platt School. And the reason why I'm naming the school is because if you Google my school, this new construction school of over $100,000, there have been fights ongoing in the schools. Yet, when it came to asking for checks and balances, talking to me, they're telling me cameras don't work. You can't have a new construction and no working camera. Since this happened March 1st, May 21st, 2 mothers ended up fighting because of a bullying incident in the school. The parents were arrested. That's May 21st of this year. May 17th, a 13-year-old girl was brutally beaten, a girl of color, was brutally beaten at a New Haven high school. May 30th, 10 students arrested after Ansonia High School. Then in addition to that, there was a school fighting ring in another city, which is a more affluent city. And yet, if you read every single argument, every article, there was a mediation. Somebody is going to get hurt or, God forbid, killed. There was a quote from a Texas student on May 18th, and she says, quote, "It has been happening everywhere," she said. I always kind of felt like eventually it's going to happen here too. No child should have to go to school knowing that the likelihood that violence will occur, that there's a potential for them getting to be hurt, is the norm. Violence is not supposed to be the norm in the schools. I appreciate Senator Winfield, because when it happened to my daughter, I'm a tough love mama, and I believe no is a good word. So if my daughter was at fault here, or if there was questionable behaviors, my family and those who know me and the school district know I'm about accountability, period, to include parents. When I spoke to Senator Winfield, he mentioned something called a Memorandum of Understanding. There is a public act, not number 168, that means 2015, that says there's supposed to be an agreement between local school districts and the police department. Yet I couldn't find it anywhere. So as the State Board of Education, I'm making very specific ask. So yes, that's why this may be emotional. I am coming with solutions. You should want to know every memorandum of understanding that is happening when there's a school resource officer in the school, because you have the ultimate responsibility of all 500,000 plus students within the state of Connecticut. I went to my superintendent, and for the record, Mark Benigni is a great superintendent. I remember him from the mayor. But business is business, children are children. This is not personal, this is business. When I asked for the memorandum of understanding, we had one from 1999 before the law even went to play. So I took that into account. There was no law. In 2018, I asked for a copy of it, and that was back in March, waiting for a lieutenant to sign. If you are not clear about the roles of responsibility for hall monitors, school climate officers, and officers, how do people know what to do when there is a crisis, when the roles and expectations are not clear? And here's another incident where you don't communicate with parents and community and families. You cannot run the schools in isolation of families and community, because there is a role I must play to ensure my child is safe, that the school she attends is safe, and that she is held accountable to her responsibility in the school. That is not your role. You are loco parentis. You act as the parent when I am not there, but you are not the parent. And then when you see this many fights in less than a month, that is over almost 24 kids. And you cannot just look at the count of the student. This fight happened in a cafeteria. So that means not just my child, not just the other children, but all 200 and 300 children become at risk. So I am asking this board to, number one, to want to know these memorandums of understandings. I do believe that they should be part of your website, because it is an agreement with local school districts. And you are ultimately responsible. And yes, local school districts have autonomy, but at the end of the day, the Supreme Court ruled on the CCJEF, that lawsuit, that the state is still ultimately responsible for these students, and you cannot delegate your responsibility. That's number one. Number two, I am asking us to look at racial profiling, because the report that I submitted to the state board this morning is a report from Georgetown School of Law and Poverty. I know I got time, has been up. And then the Black National Justice, Women's Justice. It's a Georgetown report. I sent it to the board to review, because you cannot tell us to accept your data, and then when there are other data that shows we have problems in Connecticut, you can ignore it. I'm asking you to review the Georgetown report, because black children, from what I've learned, they feel that they're allowed to be have fighting school and no interventions. So the last thing is, you need to look at racial profiling, because we have a law on the books about racial profiling in the community. And what makes us think that if racial profiling is happening in the community, that it's not happening in the hallways? They're the same law enforcement agencies. Again, doesn't mean we have a great law enforcement, doesn't mean we doesn't have great educators and administrations. But we, as adults, have an obligation to ensure that every single child has a safe learning environment. And we all must take some responsibility for every fight that's happening in these schools if we're not holding districts accountable, if there's not effective mediation plans, and there's not a safety plan in place. So I thank you for listening to me. I will be back. I was off the grid for 90 days. I am back, because this is unacceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We do miss you when you don't come.
I'm sure you do. Have a great one. Thank you very much.
That concludes that part of public participation. Now we're going to move to one of the highlights, I believe, of the June meeting, which is the end of the year presentation by the State Student Advisory Council on Education. We always learn from the students, and we welcome their report and their input. So thank you. Again, remember to use the microphone.
Is Mr. Maloney here as well?
why don't you please come forward? I want to recognize one of our great partners in public education in Connecticut, the Connecticut Association of Schools, and Dave Maloney, who leads this work. And usually I get the chance to connect with the students, and this year schedules didn't allow, and I asked Mr. Nesmith to collect. I'll probably never connect with the students. I'll probably never get to go back again because it's so inspiring, isn't it? Like the best thing. So if you don't mind, Mr. Maloney, to introduce the students, and also for the members of the audience who may be less familiar with the work of SASE, just give a brief thumbnail on that.
Good morning, Commissioner, and good morning to the Board of Ed.
Could you use the microphone? I'm sorry, I have to.
I know.
The old coach has to use the
Yeah.
microphone.
You can stand here and shout if you want to, so we do need.
Good morning, everybody.
They used to have.
It is a thrill to be here, and Commissioner Wenzel, those remarks are genuinely appreciated by all of us. So SASE, State Student Advisory Council on Education, comes to you by state statute and is a group of high school students that I'm very privileged to work with. This year the council has 18 students. There are 5 of them about ready to give a 3-part report. SASE embarks on action-based research subsequent to the commissioners meeting with them. This year we've met with Desi and Sarah on a number of occasions, and you're going to hear more about that. We have Tamashi from Glastonbury High School. We have Abigail. She needs to deliver her report pretty soon because the parking meter on the street is ticking, so just be mindful of that. Isabella is from Laurelton Hall. She's a junior. Anania is from Amity Regional High School. She's a senior. And Savania is a senior at Windsor High School. So let's take it away. They have 3 reports to give to you. And by the way, you already seen their PowerPoint. Am I correct?
We haven't. We
have
haven't seen it, but we haven't.
We're going to fast forward it and get to the salient issues that are of primary importance, and Bella is going to lead us off.
We're not using the timer, but we'll keep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. You get started. Poverty, deprivation, vulnerability. These are the words that come to mind when I think of the summer slide. These are the words that come to mind when I think of the first grader who is spending his summer at camp, making new friends, trying new things, and most importantly, learning new skills, versus the first grader who is stuck at home all summer, watching TV, on technology, void of interaction and void of enrichment. Over the past 9 months, my peers and I have worked hard to identify and solve the summer slide. As you have seen already in our PowerPoint, we have collected perspectives from both educators and students to reach our resolution. Summer learning loss starts as a small problem for kindergartners, but grows to a major issue for students for the rest of their educational careers. Learning loss is directly correlated to socioeconomic status, something that is completely out of the child's control. Low-income students are at the most risk and can lose up to 3 months of reading comprehension skills throughout the summer, which puts them behind at the beginning of the school year and continues to add over the years. But why are low-income students at the greatest disadvantage? The problem is rooted in lack of opportunity. Parents are financially incapable of providing enriching experiences, leading to boredom, isolation, and inactivity. As students grow older, the achievement gap widens, and they are forced into summer school, leading to a greater academic disinterest. Summer is a time for hands-on experiences, a time away from the classroom, and traditional summer school completely counteracts this. Students are unaware of the opportunities available to them for little to no cost. We have done research to find exemplary summer programs around the United States and Connecticut. A long-term goal, we are suggesting Connecticut establish a database with opportunities listed along with contact and application information. We would also like to reach out to Connecticut universities and colleges to hold these programs with scholarship or subsidized rates. Possibly a suggestion for legislators to incentivize these institutions to hold these programs. This is the key to narrowing the gap between high-income and low-income families. Finally, we reached out to educators to see their perspective of how a student can most beneficially spend their summer. We would love to ignite an initiative that encourages communities to offer these programs, whether it be public library mentorships, internships, or job opportunities. A long-term goal SASE investigated was the 12-month versus 9-month school calendar. Despite many flaws with this system and conflicts with our current system, we should consider major calendar changes for the benefit of long-term education. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass this off to Abby.
Thank you. We're going to wait till you finish and then have the board ask questions or comments.
Hi, I am Abigail Leander. I'm here to present on the Connecticut Breakfast Program. The School Breakfast Program is a national-run program similar to the School Lunch Program that offers breakfast and key nutritional values to students at school rather than at home in terms of if they have extra need or financial struggles. Currently, Connecticut is one of the lowest-ranking states in terms of participation in the School Breakfast Program. As a survey we conducted states, only 26.1% of the 1,711 students we surveyed said that they eat breakfast every day. Out of those students, 33.5% said that they usually never eat breakfast every day during the school week, and 25.1% said that they occasionally eat breakfast, otherwise known as 1 to 2 times per week during the school year. So it's our goal to try and develop solutions so that we can make breakfast more attainable to all students in Connecticut. So the big question is why is breakfast important and why should we care about increasing the amount of participation among students in Connecticut? Students who eat breakfast every day are more likely to perform in the classroom. Hunger has a significant effect on how students focus and how receptive they are to the information that they're presented with. A survey showed that out of students who ate breakfast every day during the school week, 83.3% had an average grade of A's and B's throughout the school year. Hunger also affects how often students are at school. People who eat breakfast every day are more likely to be present in the classroom and have less absences. Hunger causes people to be distracted, and students have less focus on their education and are more concerned about when their next meal is coming. It is also important to address the achievement gap with this, as students who are more at risk are ones who are at lower poverty levels. These students since breakfast is such a key value in the day and our focus, creating breakfast opportunities for these students who are poorer and more at a disadvantage than our more affluent students have this resource that will help them be a step ahead and more at the same level as other students in the classroom. So what can we do to encourage participation? Surveys that we conducted showed that students found that one of the biggest issues as to why they don't participate in the school breakfast program is because of time. There are several alternative breakfast models that have been shown to prove very well in the classroom. And there's 4 different models. There's grab-and-go breakfast and breakfast kiosks, where they're very similar, where students can grab breakfast on the way to the class or in between classes or in homeroom or before class gets started. That way they don't have to worry about waiting in line in the lunchroom during the specific hours that breakfast is specifically offered. The 2 other models that are breakfast after the bell and second chance breakfast, where typical breakfast times are extended so that all students have a chance to get breakfast, whether it's after their first class or after they arrive at school. The breakfast after the bell model was installed in New York, and 37,000 more students participated in breakfast. And in Connecticut, 58.6% of students we surveyed said that they would participate more if breakfast times were extended. It's important to note that all of these models are different, as they are set to allow schools to pick which one fits their system different, as every school is designed differently. This allows more flexibility and gives schools a chance to all participate in extending breakfast and allowing more students to participate. One of the biggest factors that has increased participation amongst other states has been legislation. Washington, D.C., Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, West Virginia, which has the #1 ranked national school breakfast program, Illinois, and Nevada have all included legislation that includes models such as second chance breakfast and breakfast after the bell. Specifically, I'd like to mention Nevada, which after installing its legislation that mandated that schools with 70% of students that are at free and reduced price lunch are required to have a second chance breakfast model. From the year that they installed it, they started at 41st, and the year after it, they jumped to 25th in the national ranking. And low-income participation jumped 26.5%. This can be done with funding or without funding. Illinois also had a very successful second chance breakfast legislation model that didn't include any additional funding. Another way that we can increase participation is by encouraging more schools to participate in the school breakfast program. Currently 80.6% of Connecticut schools participate in the school breakfast program, whereas nationally 91.3% participate. Encouraging more schools to participate in the school breakfast program will allow for more opportunities for students to attain breakfast. Moreover, community eligibility is a program where 40% or more, if a school identifies as 40% or more students are free and reduced price, they can offer free breakfast and lunch to all students. This will get over the cost barriers. And lastly, the big question is, when I get to it, is funding. With legislation, there obviously is, you can include funding that will provide more money for schools to use as resources. However, the cost to install breakfast after the bell programs and extend hours are very minimal, and the program does pay for itself. As you increase participation, there are greater reimbursement rates that come back to schools. Each meal that is purchased at free and reduced price have funds that come back to the state nationally and federally. And there is an FRAC goal that states that if 70% of free and reduced price students participate in breakfast for every 100 that participate in lunch, that is their benchmark that they set for states. And if Connecticut were to meet that goal, there would be an extra $8,845,330 on the table for Connecticut to collect in reimbursement rates. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you take these into consideration.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're just going to go back to the other one. Should I be pointing this at something else?
Hello everyone, my name is Tamashi Hetiarchi and I'm here to present on careers in education, and we as SASE had a presentation by Ms. Barzi talking about how that there isn't much student interest in pursuing a career in education, and so through our research we found that the main barrier to this is the public perception of teaching. So after surveying about 130 high school students, we found that on a scale of 1 to 5, 4 students of 130 thought that a career in education would be most favorable, which is very sad to see, and a majority of students put that as a 2, which is very low on the scale. And so we feel that what we should do is change the culture around teaching and education. And so things that we should publicize that are positive aspects of teaching include job security and the high level of autonomy that isn't present in many jobs and that teaching does have, that many people aren't aware about, and really stressing the human factor of teaching and to be that one caring adult in a child's life. In that same survey, we had students stated that associated social status was not something that they found important, and the opportunity for professional development and or networking was. And that is also another benefit of teaching that many students are unaware of that we should bring to their awareness. And negative perspectives on teaching that really kind of kill what the students getting into teaching is having the stigma of teaching being a not high paid job, and that many teachers actually speak poorly of their own profession and saying that, oh, I don't get paid enough to do this and things like that, which really defeat teaching and cause other students not to want to pursue teaching. And there are many misconceptions about teaching that haven't been addressed that many students are unaware of. And so for us, we found that just countering this perspective would change a lot, and we found that using social media would be the best because us teens just use Instagram, Twitter, things like that. And we have a video for you. I know we're pressed for time, but we found that viral videos are very good at getting the word around. And if we can make one that highlights teachers such as this Teacher of the Year who was recognized and showing what they really do in the classroom, that could really help people get more interested in education. So we have the video for you.
Thank you very much. You ready, Chef? I'm gonna be ready. You ready? All right, what you got?
This was a video of an elementary school teacher who had an individualized handshake for each of his students. And this is just something small that went around Facebook and something that shows like the more of the human interaction and things people love about teaching. And so finally, just future steps that we thought we should take is using social media and creating viral videos like that. And then really rebranding the perception of teaching, maybe bringing in a public relations firm to really work on that, work on videos, media, things like that. And then also make opportunities available for high schoolers. So myself, I am a prospective teacher, and I never had like cadet teaching, future educators club or things like that in my high school. And I think if more students were open to that or given that opportunity, we would have more interest in teaching, because a lot of students aren't aware of, like, they only see teaching from the student side but not from the teacher side. But yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Bravo. I feel that all of you should be sitting behind these questions and comments for the students.
We actually have a couple more slides, if that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Like I said, there's no timer, so.
Awesome. Yes. So in addition to these 3 research projects, we've also been working on other SASE projects. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. I just need to.
I apologize for not being aware.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to get started anyway and talk to you a little bit about an overview of what we're going to talk about. So we'll be covering the Challenge to Educational Citizenship Recognition that we did through SASE, an initiative we had this April called CTCs, an open letter that we sent out from SASE to all Connecticut schools following the Parkland shooting, letter templates for students to send to legislators, and then finally what we're working on for this Friday, a statewide town hall on school safety. So to start off with the Challenge to Educational Citizenship Recognition, we honored 13 projects that we thought were outstanding in altruism and kindness and really stood out to us. One that I'd like to highlight is the 7th grade Day of Compassion. You saw that a lot of middle schools and high school students really wanted to do something after the Parkland shooting to show that they stand in unity with these schools and really want to see violence prevention. So these 7th grade students came together and organized an initiative for 200 of their classmates where they had a moment of silence and then challenged their fellow students to commit to 17 random acts of kindness. And they saw a lot of great outcomes from this initiative in their student body, and we really appreciated how these were 11 and 12-year-old students who were standing up and saying that enough is enough and we need a better, more kind, student body. So next up, what we see is the CTCs initiative. So in February, all of SASE came together, and we really felt as if we needed more unity in student bodies and a push for civic engagement. So our mission statement was, and still is, Connecticut students see the world, see its problems, and see the need for change. So we announced this initiative in April with 3 main goals. 1, encouraging positive school climate. 2, violence prevention awareness. And 3, the importance of kindness. And as Tamashi mentioned,
Our generation is notorious for using social media, but we strongly believe that it could also be used for positive social change. So what you see over there is we were featured in WTNH for CTCs, and we really spread the word to Connecticut schools. And Zaviana is going to talk to you about how our Twitter challenge really worked. And if you look up hashtag CTCs on Twitter, you can see some of these posts as well, those that were made public. Yes.
So I'm just going to elaborate on the CTCs and what exactly was supposed to happen during the CTCs week. It was because of the Parkland shooting, we wanted to represent things that how school should actually be and what it should look like, and like give hope to all the Parkland kids and even other students who had to deal with school shootings. And during the week on Monday, we had teamwork, and the color was white out, and it was just to show that, oh, we all stick together and we're all together and everything. Tuesday was strength and empathy, red and pink. Wednesday was involvement and support, blackout. Thursday was diversity, tie-dye. And Friday was kindness, maroon and silver, which are the Parkland students' colors. And these were just supposed to show that, like, this is what school is supposed to be like, and these are the students that we feel that these are the most important things represented in schools today. This is a letter that we had formulated as well as the CTC's week, and this is a letter that all the state advisory students were supposed to present to their local Board of Education, and I'll read it as is. In recent weeks, students across the United States have been clear in the resolve and mission. No more. We implore the state of Connecticut high schools to pursue a national initiative and interstate cooperation in the following areas. Engage with the voices of concerned citizens, especially students, ensure absolute school safety for every district, enforce existing gun laws, expand the implementations of background checks, examine the role and prevalence of mental health and violence, and encourage a renewed culture of unity through indomitable American spirit. So this is really important. As we all can see, we're only 21 weeks, as I looked up, 21 weeks into 2018, and we've had approximately 23 school shootings. That's about one school shooting a week all around the country, and that's pretty scary to have students that we're supposed to go and learn and educate and have all these things that we wanted to represent and support, while as we're over here scared of whose school is going to be next.
And as Aviana mentioned, this was shared on Facebook via our SASE Facebook, and we saw school districts from Richfield to Waterbury to Amity all over the state really taking part in CTCs, which was really great to see. Following that, as I mentioned, we sent out those letter templates so that students could contact their legislators easily. So you see that they basically fill in the blanks and then send it out to whichever legislator that they would like to contact with. Now finally, what I am really excited to talk to you about, because this event is coming up this Friday and we would love if you can come, we are organizing a statewide town hall on school safety. So after CTCs, we really came together and talked about this because we wanted to see momentum going on into the summer and into the fall, because this is a constant issue that's on students' minds. I mean, you see students who are anxious, they feel unsafe, they are worried. If you go on Twitter and you look up hashtag school safety, hashtag never again, you can easily see students tweeting all over Connecticut, all over the country about figuring out where they would hide if there was a school shooting in their school. These aren't concerns that our peers should be having. They should be focusing on their algebra test the next day, not on whether or not they're going to hide from a school shooter. So we think this needs to be a constant focus going on into the summer, into the fall, into next year. And we wanted to do something different. So at this town hall, we're bringing in people and experts from multiple different perspectives. We're bringing in legislators, bringing in educators, we're bringing in internet safety experts, we're bringing in psychologists, all to come and talk with high school student leaders about what we can do differently to make our schools safer. We're excited we're going to have Senator Blumenthal there, the executive directors from Cass and CAVE, and we recently learned that our commissioner is going to be stopping by as well, so we're excited you can make it. We are really looking forward to having this town hall, having students engage with those who make decisions about their education, and we hope that you all are going to be able to come. It's at 1 p.m. in the old judiciary room of the state capitol, right across town. So we're really looking forward to that, and we hope it's meaningful and innovative for students who are taking part, and we want to see change. And I know you do too. So thank you very much for our time today, and we hope to see you Friday. Thank you.
Questions, comments? I think we're all so impressed that we're silent. Any, please.
Here, not that one.
Oh, I got two, okay. Yeah, so overall, like, you guys already know, like, I'm one of the student members, but, I'm really impressed with everything you guys do. You guys go so in-depth with everything. You're so passionate about everything you do. And I just want to say that I really liked your letter template, because as another student, and you probably know your friends, they really want to take part in action, but they don't know how. So making it kind of like an easy way to go about it is really cool. And I'm just, thank you guys for everything you do. It's so amazing.
Any other comments? Please,
I'm also going to add, too, that I truly believe as an educator that you guys are going to make this move. I really do. And I think everybody following you will follow in your footsteps. So I'm proud of all of your pieces that you went over today, because they all matter so very much. So thank you.
On behalf of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, I'm very pleased with the empirical outcome and findings of your work, where it's quantifiable, and I found the issues to be salient. You did a really excellent job. I would also propose that I take back to the system office information regarding compassion, to perhaps align what you're doing with our centers. At Western Connecticut State University, there is a center for compassion and creativity. So I think that would be a wonderful partnership for those students, so that they too can join you in your efforts in focusing on the compassion information you presented. Congratulations, you've done a really great job.
Gary.
Thank you. Leadership and persistence. Keep that banner in front of you all your lives. You will make a difference.
So since I think February, I've known you guys. I've been going to your meetings, and it's been pretty awesome seeing them work, because they're so on task and dedicated. So we've all said it already, but like, you guys are doing really cool stuff. I just wanted to ask about the viral video. Is that in progress, or like have you posted it yet? It's like about, because I know you guys were working on a video. Just like how that's going.
So we do not have a video like done or anything, but we have a list of teachers who students have recommended as like vibrant teachers in the classroom, and that would be willing for us to go and like video like how they teach and some key aspects of their classroom work, and then we can put that together. That would be something we could work on next fall, possibly. But yes, that we do have resources to do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it is, you guys had your last meeting already.
Yep.
And so it's kind of like, it's a little sad. It's like you have all these like initiatives that can happen, but you may not be able to be the ones to do it.
I really appreciate the fact that you identify things that will help to change the narrative. So instead of blaming students, you are recognizing that students that don't have breakfast don't have the same capacity. That's why I had breakfast today, because I knew I was going to be sharing the meeting, so I ate double the amount. But and then you identify practices that again are doable and make sense and would make such an impact. The career piece, the notion of changing the whole narrative about what a teacher does. It's the most important job, because you change lives. Teachers change lives. And the whole notion of the summer school slide, and the opportunities. I just paid for my granddaughter to go to space camp, and she's a privileged child because she went to space camp. She's 11. And that opportunity, that doesn't mean she's smarter, she just had an opportunity and exposure that other children don't have. And finally, the safety. How do you work together? How do we work together to ensure the safety environment that needs to be present in our schools. So thank you. Like I said, you should be behind this desk. I hope you can continue to influence education and policy because it's very important. Anything else?
So,
Yes.
the last word, well, maybe the last word for me anyway. Now I know why, and it's been in the news in the last 24 hours, there's a clear trend supporting in this country to have more women in leadership, running for office. Now I know.
Thank you, Terry. I do endorse what you said.
But I might add, there are young men.
I hope so. Great.
However, the young men couldn't be here today because they're taking exams, they have their final senior picnics, and the best I could do is bring four of the best, brightest women who have passion. Had the men been here, you would have been equally impressed.
Thank you for clarifying. We accept that clarification. Thank you. The commissioner reminds me that maybe we should know what your plans are for next year.
Some of you are seniors, some of you are juniors, so some of you that are not graduating, I certainly hope we'll be seeing you back to continue to inform the work of the boards and departments, but it'd be great to hear what's up next for each of you.
So I'm going to the University of Connecticut and pursuing secondary science education.
I'm also attending the University of Connecticut, and I'll be majoring in allied health sciences to pursue a career as a physician's assistant.
I'm a junior, so hopefully I'll be back next year. I'm hoping to. I'm a senior. I'll be attending Yale University in the fall, and I'm interested in political science, and hopefully we'll be studying education studies too.
Unlike my other members, I kind of took a different route, the artistic way. I'm planning to be an actress, so I'm going to the New York Film Academy in New York.
Wow. You should get your signature now. Thank you so much. Thank you again, and congratulations. And the most important thing to help us think through and see that there are solutions to some of these challenges that we have. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And then our own board member, Samoa, suggested a topic, so we included it in the agenda, Samoa. So now it's your turn, and I'm not going to use the time with you.
Okay. Do you want me to sit there? Over here?
I think you can.
Oh, okay.
She's gonna-
Oh, thank you.
Do what I'll do there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is weird, sitting here. So the topic I wanted to discuss today was kind of just how can we amplify student voice and leadership, because over the past few weeks after talking to my peers and friends from like across the state, what I realized that was a lot of students among each other, they can openly talk about issues where they face racial discrimination or bullying, not only from the students but also the staff, like we've heard in the public participation earlier, but they don't really know like where to go or like what authority to pretty much like talk to about and stand up for themselves and bring up this issue and create positive change. You see a lot where it's kind of like they accept it as just something that they have to deal with, and then it's annoying, but they just have to go through it every day because that's just how school is going to be when it shouldn't be like that. And then so them not knowing where they can go to seek help or create change or really talk about these issues in ways that would bring like effective repercussions and stuff like that, went into how when I was meeting with Sassy and getting to know them too, and also my discussions with Javario, when we applied to be student members of the Board of Ed, we didn't know that Sassy existed. And for like the first few months, I remember us just being like, what is Sassy? It was like on our application, they mentioned some state student advisory council on education, but we had no idea what it was until we asked Aldith about it, and then she got us in contact with Dave Maloney, and then
so I started going to their meetings. And then what I realized in talking to them there was a lot of them knew about SASE, but they didn't know about being able to serve on the State Board of Ed. And then, because there are two separate applications, but it doesn't get to every student, because what happens is that it gets sent to the superintendent, who then sends it to the principals, who then might send it to whoever who will send it to the students. And it doesn't exactly spread that fluidly as it should. And so one of the ideas I've been thinking is making it so that there's student with student interaction in order to amplify that, because just as a student, when you have someone else up here talking to you, it has much bigger effect. So ideas of trying to do that where it's kind of encouraging, I think, future student members of the board to interact more and speak more with students. I remember like early in the year when we spoke at the Teacher of the Year ceremony, that was a pretty cool experience, and it was like amazing because afterwards I remember people approaching us and just being like, wow, I really liked your speech, and it's like, whoa, you paid attention and you really liked my speech. But if we could have the audience be students instead of just adults, I think the impact would be even greater. And so having student members maybe like visiting schools or having more opportunities to speak in front of a youth audience, and so that also more kids know about the opportunity to serve as a student member or be on SASE and have their voice heard, or be part of effective change and making a difference that they want. So yeah, that was my ideas. Is this going to be in discussion format? Or?
I'm just going to open it for questions,
Okay.
if anybody has any questions.
Well, just to like add on, I also think like as Sassy was saying, we could also get involved in the social media aspect of making the word known, as well as I think a lot of times because we live in kind of a fast-paced era where a kid's only taking like a few seconds of information and they like don't care anymore. I think a lot of times the information that is on the State Board site for like everyone is a little bit overwhelming. So I think it's important to make it easily accessible and easily understandable for anyone. So even if Sassy or like future members, like there's a lot of juniors, they could get involved in maybe breaking down some information that could go out to students specifically. So yeah.
You want to add something?
Sure, let me just add a couple of comments. So listening to this, I think it's a wonderful initiative. And I'm going to turn to the young lady right behind me. I'm going to embarrass her right now. Bella said she's a junior at Laurelton Hall. Well, a junior automatically will be on the council next year. Your suggestion is so intrinsic and so compelling for student voice that we're going to figure out a way for SASE to act as a conduit for what you just talked about. And that is to amplify student voice. Now, Bella is very articulate in technology. And as a junior returning, I'm going to charge her with the targeted date of September 15th to develop a website, which we could place on the state website, as well as CAS being the vehicle to put all this information out to our member schools. And we've got to do it beyond the traditional pathway. You heard the kids talk about hashtag this, Snapshot that, Instagram this, and that's where we've got to go. And Bella, get ready. That's our suggestion.
I think definitely along with that, like having the student members have a bigger social media presence, like maybe even letting them take a little bit of control of like the board's Facebook page and allowing them to like post stuff or even create, I don't know, an Instagram. I'm not that well versed in social media, to be honest, but like you know, they can start like a Snapchat or something and then start to like increase the people who, how does Snapchat work? Okay, yeah, so they can create a Snap story. Yeah. So, just trying to get that to be present, because I know Sassy created a Facebook page, but it's hard to get it started, but like once you get it rolling, it can really blow up.
My question was simply going to be, so what's the conduit and how do you make it happen? And so the answer was already provided, and I have full faith that your generation can figure it out, because I have no idea.
I think, Commissioner, that maybe what we can sort of do is sort of ask for an update, a brief update next semester in fall, to see given the goal of, again, reaching out to more students to see how using technology, how they're doing it or whatever means they're doing it. Does that make sense?
That is.
And like another thing I noticed when we were going through like applications too is that there are definitely like certain districts that you get a lot of applications from,
Right.
and then many districts where you don't know anything. So I have a few friends who are from different towns and stuff, and I would mention this opportunity, they'd be like, what? And I had one friend, she had to go to her principal specifically on her own and be like, okay, so you should have information about this application, can you pass it on to me? And she was able to get it, but the rest of her student body didn't know that it existed. So that was like an issue that I think.
Thank you so much, Amai. We really appreciate, the fact that you have been in this board, but also you're thinking of others, of ensuring that others have the same opportunity. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you. And you can join us again. There's no executive session, so the next item in the agenda is the consideration of the minutes. So I need a motion for the May 2nd, 2018 meeting minutes. So moved. Second. Thank you. Any questions or changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then the May 23rd, 2018 special meeting, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. And then the next item in the agenda is the adoption of the 2019 meeting schedule. And I need to point out, we need to adopt it formally because we discussed the fact that the first Wednesday in January will be the day after January 1st, which is a holiday. And we thought that it would be better if we have the meeting not on that Wednesday, but on Thursday. So I'm pointing it out so everybody puts it in their calendar, their paper calendar and their iPhones, that it will be January 3rd, a Thursday. So I do need a motion for the approval of the meetings for next year.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Again, January 3rd is the first. Everybody got it, right? If you come here on January 2nd, you will not get lunch. Thank you. And then we go to item 5B, approval of charter management organization.
So, Pete, I think you're gonna
Yes.
speak to that
I
item.
will be.
Yeah, thank you. I need a motion for consideration of this item.
Second.
And then we'll go.
Good morning, members of the State Board and Commissioner Wenzel. Before the board this morning is a proposed charter management contract between a charter school that was renewed for 1 year last month. That's the Stanford Academy. That was renewed, as the board will recall, under strict terms of probation and for 1 year. The board is by now, I think, familiar with the CMO contract approval process. A statute was passed in 2015 requiring that when a charter management organization and a charter school are going to engage in a contract for what the statute calls whole school management services, that contract has to go through a review process and then be submitted to the board for approval. The board has now done this several times with the work of the relevant department staff, first in our review process. And that process involves really a team effort between the legal department. Fundamentally, it's our responsibility to assess that the contract that we ultimately submit to the state board meets the requirements of the statute. We, of course, work closely with the Office of Internal Audit and the charter team in reviewing these. And before discussing the one before you today and taking your questions, I do want to say, as I've said before, we don't come with a contract to you until a fairly rigorous process has occurred in which feedback by us to the parties has been provided. Changes often result from that, so that we in the end are satisfied that what we're bringing to the board does meet the requirements of the statute. That process was followed in this case, and so we are bringing this contract to you today with a recommendation that it does meet the expectations of the statute. That's 10-66 TT for what a charter management organization contract should include, and to ensure that it doesn't do what the law says it can't do. This contract does that, and as I said, we reviewed it carefully. I do want to mention a couple other things. I think it goes without saying, but it doesn't help to point out. A contract with a CMO obviously can't go any longer than the term of the charter. So, depending on how the life of the charter evolves in this instance, you recall last month you renewed them for a year. The CMO contract would only go as long as the charter, obviously. I do want to comment before I open for any questions. You heard comments this morning from a representative CEA raising concerns about this contract. I want to say to you that respectfully, we disagree. Those views weren't previously shared with us, to my knowledge. But respectfully, we disagree with the CEA representative's comments. The contract details the way fees will be determined. It details the services for which those fees are being paid. And in fact, this is a fee provision that our internal audit office advocates for and prefers, rather than the types of fee provisions we sometimes see, which are a fixed percentage of revenue. This is a fee provision that's based on the services being provided and the cost to the CMO of providing those services. We do not see a concern with the statutory requirements, and so we are recommending it for approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions? Joe, just a couple of things. I remember several years ago when we went through the whole CMO approval process.
Right.
And to Peter's credit and Lou, I must have spent 5 hours on the issue because I had a lot of concerns about accountability, how the charters are being run. And having served on the audit committee, I'm jumping around a little bit here. If they say that they've done their homework and it's acceptable, that's good enough for me, because I remember how thorough that process was when we evaluated the whole thing. So I'm comfortable with it. But here's my only question, and if you want maybe Desi to jump in, that's fine too.
Sure.
But, and I said it in the last meeting, I'm very happy with how the department is taking accountability of charters on a per renewal basis, because in the past we just rubber stamped them. And I'm a choice guy, so I'm all in favor of this stuff as long as everything is done according to the law. But my question here, sorry for babbling, is the subjectivity piece.
Yep.
We bring a charter here, and I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I know in the last meeting we renewed it for a year. You know, when I went to a Catholic grade school, and whenever I got called in front of the nuns, my mother was always standing right next to me. So we bring the charter here, and we say to the charter, we have some issues with you, and we're going to renew you for 1 year. Well, you know, here's the mother. So what's the accountability subjectively when we approve a CMO, or is there really none? And if the answer is there is none, and it's all legal and legislated, that's it. But where's the accountability to the CMO when the charter only got a 1-year renewal?
Right. Now, I appreciate, before I answer your question, I do want to say, and I appreciate you recognizing other members of the staff that I should now do. And I want to say Lou Tedisco and Robert Kelly in the Charter Office, and of course Desi and Nora Chapman in Internal Audit and her staff. really provide enormous work effort on these matters. So I do want to recognize them too, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think the answer to the question is primarily about charter renewal and charter probation. The fundamental question of whether the State Board of Education is okay or comfortable with a charter includes the fundamental question of whether the State Board of Education is okay or comfortable with a charter having a relationship with a CMO. And in fact, the law says that. That fundamental question is really a question to dive into, and I think it properly was last month at the time of a renewal or at the time of granting a charter. The question before the board on days like today is a more technical, clinical question of now that the general concept of a charter having a relationship with a CMO has been basically accepted, we're now moving to, are the terms of the contract satisfactory under the statute? But it would be I think it's an answer to your question to say it would be entirely appropriate for the State Board of Education, when considering a charter renewal or whether to grant an application for an initial charter, to say, you're planning to have a relationship with this other organization, and we have real concerns with that, and we are not going to renew your charter until you satisfy us that this organization is, properly accountable to you. Because what the CMO contract requirement is really about is accountability to the charter school. It's the charter and CMO being accountable to the state at the time of the renewal. So I think you have muscle to flex at the time of renewal.
Well, how would you, and I don't want to do too deep of a dive
Sure.
on this, but there's an accountability between the charter and the CMO. Should we bring the CMO in with the charter for the renewal for questions?
In an appropriate case, there would be no problem with doing that. And in fact, that would be, I think that's actually happened.
Right.
Before, at times of Achievement First, for example, renewals, you have CMO representatives of Achievement First who are answering questions. So certainly the answer is yes, you could do that.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
The next item is the adoption of the Computer Science Teacher Association K-12 standards. Ellen and Melissa, and I do need a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
Vice Chair Lopez, Commissioner Wenzel, members of the board. I'm really pleased to bring before you both the Computer Science Teacher Association standards for computer science, K-12, as well as the International Society for Technology Education, otherwise known as ISTE, standards for students. Melissa will provide you with an overview of the standards, how they're similar, how they're different. We provided a graphic in your packet as well to help you understand which audiences these standards are directed at and what they have in common and what's different between them. We presented these standards to the Standards and Assessment Committee twice, in February and in April. Before I turn it over to Melissa, it's really important that I thank the people that have been so intrinsically involved in their development. You already know we're very short-staffed at the department, and so a big shout-out goes to Melissa Hickey, Dr. Hickey at my left, as well as Jennifer Michalik, who is our mathematics consultant, who we capitalized on. She has a minor in computer science, and she has taken on computer science in addition to her very significant mathematics duties, and I want to thank you publicly for all your efforts.
I also have to thank Doug Casey. He's the Executive Director of the Commission for Educational Technology. He and his organization did a tremendous lift around stakeholder engagement for the ISTE standards. And when I explained to Doug that we were really short-staffed, his group really jumped in and helped with making sure that parents, students, and community members were on board with those standards. We have a pretty clear standards adoption process. Before we bring it to you, we do a high degree of stakeholder engagement to make sure we're bringing forward what is actually wanted and needed by the field. So I have to thank all three of those. I think Doug is in the house. Is he here? Yeah, he might have stepped out, but I did want to publicly thank him as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Melissa for a brief overview, and then we'll open it up to the board for any questions.
Good morning, and thank you once again for giving us this opportunity to present the two standards. So this work started, it was very rapid fire, quite honestly, the computer science work. We'll start with that. Under Jen Michelik, so any real specific questions, she'll be able to give you that history. But leading us up to this point, as Ellen mentioned, these were brought before the Standards and Assessment Committee, and the computer science were brought multiple times. At our last meeting, Vice Chair Lopez recommended that we create visuals so that people could see how, although these are both technology standards, they are very different also. And as you heard from the students this morning, technology is their life, really. And what's so great about the visual here in your packet, you can see where, with this Venn diagram, we have the computer science standards, which are about learning to create technology. And the ISTE standards are having students use technology in ways that are ethical, in ways that are clear. Computer science standards are much more for the computer science classroom, whereas the education technology ISTE standards are used across the content areas. Did you want to go deeper into anything? Okay. Okay. Oh, please, I'm sorry, I didn't know what. Okay, I didn't know, I saw puzzled looks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to add that, excuse me, Commissioner, I didn't mean to step on you there. ISTE standards are very close to the work of library media specialists, particularly at the elementary and middle school level, where students take courses typically called something like information technology. It's about accessing through technology knowledge. It's about using the internet. It's about using and developing resources. It's about knowing what a credible resource looks like. As opposed to, imagine you're taking, and everyone thinks computer science is just coding. That is not an accurate statement, but imagine you're taking a coding course. That would fall under computer science. And so the two are very different, but much needed by two separate audiences. And Doug is in the room. I did just want to have an opportunity to stand up and get the credit he deserves. Again, Doug, I thanked you before you came in the room, but the Commission for Educational Technology has been a huge supporter, and we really appreciate their efforts. Do you have anything else you want to say about the standards?
I think that's all questions.
Any questions?
I get you. If somebody picked this up, who's going to pick it up, or who's going to make sure that this happens in the school? Is this an and then the second part of it is it an expectation that all students would be, in all schools across every place in the state, would be exposed and held to these same standards?
I think that's a great question. One of the things that changed significantly in Connecticut by statute last year is that the threaded within other kinds of coursework, especially at the elementary or middle school. But in terms of specific courses, like in the high school, all courses must be designed to the state standards. And the language that says, for the first time, the language in the statute recognizes that all courses that count for high school credit must be in alignment with the standards passed by the Connecticut State Board of Education. So your adoption of these standards has a very, very powerful effect on what happens in terms of curriculum development for our high schools, but also for our elementary and middle schools.
And Mr. Trufant, in terms of implementation, we are going to do the very best that we can to A, publicize, and B, support largely remotely through technology. We're going to have a web page devoted to each of these. We're going to communicate with library media specialists and other teachers at the elementary and middle school level. And we need a much more robust plan for getting the standards out at the high school level. We're not just credit bearing, but as the commissioner said, folks need to know this is the framework you should be working off of. We don't have funding for this. The academic funding was cut. The academic office funding was cut. However, we'll do the very best we can. And Jen's really done a tremendous lift through face-to-face meetings, through resources that we can post on our webpage, et cetera.
I'm not as concerned about the high school as I am the elementary school and the middle school. It's just that, not every school's got a little robot. Not every school's going to have media specialists. There's a lot of the under-resourced or the lack of funds in the different schools is cut back tremendously. And, I just worry about how in some of the, the schools that have the big challenges financially, how they're going to be able to step up to these requirements. Not that they're bad, it's and not that they're onerous. It's just that there's so much going on, and it's not going to be. You're not going to have somebody in the school necessarily to lead that charge.
So if I can just speak to that a little bit, that was one of the things in the standards writing group for the computer science standards. One of the things that was determined early on was that we felt that the 2017 Computer Science Teachers Association standards, which are standards passed by the National Computer Science Teachers Organization, truly captured computer science in its essence, and therefore the bulk of the time that this group met was spent on creating the implementation guidance document, specifically to address the concerns that you've mentioned. The one thing that's very misunderstood with computer science, I think both on a local level and even on a national level, is that in order to implement computer science, you need hardware to be able to do that and software to be able to do that. There's a lot of what's termed as unplugged activities that get at the critical thinking skills that are embedded within computer science standards that don't require any physical piece of technology to do. So I think that's one benefit we have going for us in terms of implementing. The implementation guidance document also provides different models of implementation. We understand that anytime the state board adopts new standards, it takes some time for districts to figure out how they're going to go about doing that. So we've provided some different ideas in terms of if you're a district who's really just starting down this path, how you might be able to implement that within the constructs of what you already have, because districts are very overloaded, versus districts who have been doing this for some time, how we could actually create a continuum of courses so that we can better prepare our students to enter the college and in computer or technology industries that we know are much needed, not only right here in the state of Connecticut, but nationwide.
Frequently as well, the adoption of standards can help superintendents advocate for resources that they need in order to provide this for the students. So the expectation that the state has can sometimes provide some backstop and some help for when it's difficult to decide how to dedicate resources at the local level. So hopefully this will help superintendents who want to do more in computer science and information technology. And our superintendents in Connecticut are a very progressive group. They're very committed to making sure that our kids are college and career ready, and I think they're also really committed to understanding the role of technology. And some superintendents serve on the commission that Mr. Casey leads, so I think that it's really governor has advocated for and the legislature has approved over $25 million in bonding for computer hardware. So while Jen's point that not all computer science thinking requires hardware, and there's a lot of really neat things we see in terms of teaching coding thinking and stuff to young kids, there is more hardware in our schools than there was 6 years ago. And a lot of that was because we needed to get ready to be able to provide our assessments online, and we had to make sure every child in the state of Connecticut had an equal chance to do that. So we've really been part of trying to work on the equity piece that you pointed out, Mr. Truffaut.
And Mr. Truffaut, I'd like to actually clarify, because I feel like I might have misspoke. All teachers need to use the ISTE standards for students. Those are the user standards. And the standards are not new, they're newly revised, but they've been in existence for 10 years. Teachers coming out of teacher prep may be more prepared, but if there's technology, I can speak for as a former school leader, when there's technology in the building, you're very conscious of using the very expensive technology you have. And so that really is at the school level, where you use the standards to say, are you making sure that your students know how to do safe searches? Are you making sure that your students know how to find what a credible resource is? So I don't think on the ISTE side that it's as big a lift, because people are aware of those standards and have used technology. But I did want to clarify that everyone has to address the student standards for ISTE. It's not like you can just take a class. It should be in your math class when you're online for math work. It should be in your ELA class, etc. It should be in each and every class.
Any other questions? I had the benefit of sitting in the academic standards committee, and because of the questions that I asked, we needed 2 meetings to answer all my, educate me. So I know the commitment that the association has to seeing this being done. I know that there's an implementation approach, and I would totally agree with the commissioner that standards are needed if we're going to go and prepare students with, to think in terms of the computer science approach and use of technology. So thank you again. So if there are no questions or comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
all
very
the
much.
work. And please share with your colleagues. I know that we're enthusiastically waiting for the approval of this.
That email will be going out momentarily.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have 2 more items with Peter. So I need a motion for the waive request for Richfield.
Second.
And then we'll do the other one. I think the board is hungry because everybody, like,
Right, well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again, board members and Commissioner Wenzel. So before the board this morning are items D and E, which are both the same issue, which is requests by 2 school districts to waive the statutory requirement of having 180 days of school. This is an item that the State Board of Education has considered in the past on prior occasions, although I think it's been a while. We're very lucky here at the department to have an authority on this statutory process, and that's my colleague Laura Anastasio, who really has been working with school districts this season on these requests. Before I turn it to her for a brief overview of the law, and then we can take your questions, I'll just say that there have been a fair amount of communication with school districts over the past several weeks, primarily relating to the very severe storms that occurred in Western Connecticut. So we've been communicating with school districts about what the requirement of the law is and about what our expectations are in service of your responsibility. And that responsibility is set in statute in section 1015, which says that the school year shall be 180 days. Another statute says that it ends on June 30th, so you have all the way till June 30th. This year, that would be June 29th, because June 30th is a Saturday. But it does say that the State Board of Education may grant a waiver of the 180 days on account of unavoidable emergency, and that's the terms of the statute. I'll now turn it to my colleague, Attorney Anastasio, who can just give you a little overview and explain what our recommendation is this morning.
Good morning.
As Attorney Haberlant was saying, over the many decades that there has been a State Board of Education, there have been many situations where there have been requests for waivers of this minimum requirement. So school districts at a minimum must provide 180 days. In the statute as well, there is that encouragement that they offer more, not less. So the State Board over these years has been very reluctant to grant these waivers. The standard really is that a school district is unable, due to unavoidable circumstances, to complete 180 days prior to the end of the school year. The school year is defined by statute, as Attorney Haberlant said, as ending on June 30th of a given year. We have two requests, one from Ridgefield School District. The high school did not complete 180 days. They have extended their school year through to June 29th. They did, as you can probably tell from the information that the Ridgefield superintendent provided, they did look into the possibility of Memorial Day. They found that that was not going to be doable for many reasons that he cited in his letter. However, they did make a good faith effort to at least explore that idea. And then with Danbury Public Schools, Danbury had a number of closures due to unforeseen circumstances during the course of the year that put them close to the 180-day mark by June 29th, but that, that incident in May with the storms definitely put them over. There are several schools that will be missing 2 days, and the rest of the schools will be missing 1 day. Typical practice for the State Board is to require the school districts to make up those days the following year. It certainly is doable. They can schedule it. It can be inconvenient, it can be inexpensive, and that would be up to the discretion of this board to determine whether or not it is necessary and appropriate under these circumstances.
Questions?
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, any questions?
There was, I guess, a question raised earlier about requiring more days added on next year. Can you talk about the rationale?
Sure, and I'll do a quick comment and then turn it over to Laura. I think really what it is it's a historical approach that the State Board and the department has taken on these issues as a common sense way of making up what was lost in the present year. Now, one could point out, well, some of the students may not be there next year, certainly the ones who graduated out. There will be a critical mass of students who missed the day this year who will be there next year. Fundamentally, it is what the board, through the department's recommendation, has done historically when granting these waivers. It's not required by statute. Anything to add?
Yes. I think, again, going back to that positions in past years, the State Board has viewed this minimum requirement as being essential to a child's constitutional right to an education. And they take it, and they've in the past taken that very seriously. Even though there may be a number of children who either transfer out of the district or who graduate out of the district, the vast majority of those students are missing that day. And in Connecticut, we do have inclement weather periodically. It is a means to really encourage the districts not only to be very cautious when they do close school, but also to encourage them to add additional days onto their school year so they do have that flexibility.
So let's talk about mastery-based learning and as opposed to seat time. And it seems like we're in the seat time. This is in the seat time construct, not the mastery construct.
I'm not sure that that's necessarily the only way to view that. I think that when we talk about mastery learning, and I would obviously defer to the commissioner and educators, I would just put out there that I think there's probably a fair amount of the mastery type learning that's happening in the building. Where is that? Where are we doing that? Is that under instruction?
These really are two different things, and this is a statutory minimal requirement. If
Eric, I have Eric, Erin. Sammy and then Terry.
Okay. What is the minimum number of days that a student has to come to school?
I don't have an answer for that because there are certain requirements. Each district has its own absentee
Well, there are
requirements.
There are some requirements there. So what's at issue today is not about student accountability, it's about district accountability. So the district is required to provide education for our students 180 days in a calendar year. And there are a lot of other critical promises to kids, including some that are legally required. They're built on that. For instance, for students identified for special education, their programming, is provided in their IEPs based on the school schedule and things like that. A student is considered chronically absent from school if they miss 10% or more of the school year. And that's, we track both average daily attendance and chronic absenteeism in terms of our students. Then in addition, there are laws related to truancy. If a student is absent 4 times without reason, and some of that reason component is part of locally developed Board of Education policies. But if they have 4 unexcused absences in a month, then they are also truant, which then there are legal requirements. So did I cover all the different aspects?
Yeah, no, the commissioner nailed it, and just to re-emphasize what she said at the outset, that's critical, important information, but it is totally separate from the question of a school district having actual school being open for 180 days. The responsibilities that the commissioner just described are responsibilities that are independent from that to make sure that students are going to school. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I appreciate that to know that they're separate, but I would imagine logic would state that they not be separate, right? That if we're talking about, so I calculated 18 days or more, then the student is truant.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but chronically absent.
Chronically absent.
Truancy is a different thing, but yes.
So this is really technical. So it just made me think that, whatever the difference would be, there would be some compromise in the middle, so that this wouldn't be such a real salient issue. So that's all.
Sure, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Erin?
Peter, what would happen, both of these plans are contingent upon adding for next year. What about contractual things? Is it possible the school system wouldn't have budgeted for that type of impact? And then could this cause a budget situation for some schools?
Well, I'd say a couple things about that. You heard the superintendent from Danbury this morning give public comment. He expressed some concern about that, but he didn't say that the sky would fall. Number 2, as Laura kind of explained a moment ago, this is something that has happened historically quite a lot. Number 3, the laws of the state require 180 days, and this has been the way of implementing that requirement. So contracts, collective bargaining commitments have to be dealt with in that environment. They have to find ways of making it work. And I think that at least the institutional memory of the department and the board is that they have found ways of making it work. I don't think a collective bargaining commitment would be an exception or an excuse to a requirement to make 181 days if that's what the board ordered. Also be mindful.
In terms of when we say making it work, it is a lot of work at the local level, as you can imagine. So Dr. Pasquarello or the superintendent Ridgefield likely would have to work collaboratively with their collective bargaining group to look at things like professional development days that may be part of the teacher contract and whether they became student days. I know this year, to avoid this, what some of our school districts did was work with their local collective bargaining groups to convert spring professional development days to student school days. And maybe you did as well, Dr. Pasquarello, I think you did, right? To avoid or try to avoid, we never knew there would be a tornado, the thing of coming up against the end of June. So I think those are, it is work at the local level, and I think that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, and I should, please go ahead.
It's really the only option they have. And I think of this, you know, we saw so many districts this year and furloughs and all this type of thing to try to find savings, and it was substantial to take a furlough day or 2 days. So I know the money here is substantial. So it's really the professional development that would be harmed for these districts, because it's really their only choice.
I think that's likely, because it's likely in most communities that the calendar for the next school year has already been approved.
Yes.
And publicized to families. So it's difficult for boards. Boards could come back at another meeting, a special meeting or a summer meeting, and approve a new calendar for next year that added days. Adding days on would cost money. You know, so converting days that teachers were working anyway is likely a place that people would go.
Because it's more than just teachers. I mean, you're talking
Right,
about every
right.
staff member in the entire district.
Yes, that's true.
So I just want to give my honest opinion as a student. So I see the importance of making sure that schools are open for 180 days, even though, like, I know I definitely was not in school all 180 days because of all the traveling stuff that I have to do. But it's more that it's open so that kids can go if they want, if they're able to. But I think one day, I don't have boarding house, but I would approve the waiver of the 1 day, because to be honest, the last like 10 days of school, you're not really doing much. You know, so it's like.
Well, I hope that's not the case at
No,
all.
no, it's not, no, but
Each
it's
day
like.
of learning matters, and 10 days of school
Okay,
is
not
more
the
than
last 10 days,
5%
but
of
like
the school year.
The last like week, it's more just like projects and like closing up, and it's less about learning new content, but more about closing the year and doing like not like curriculum things. It's like 1 day I don't think will make a huge difference in your education, especially if it's the last day.
I think Terry and Maria want to make comments also, so thank you. Terry?
Well, okay, you've added to my list, but can't resist this about the last week. There'll always be a last week. On our farm where we grow trees in square blocks, the tree on the corner often gets run over. And you think, well, in the course of equipment moving, you know, it's on the corner. And we often say, well, we should just cut it down. So, but if we do that, then the tree behind it gets run over. So there may, I know this may sound a little radical, but if you accept the fact, and I think it was always thus that the last week of school was a little different, but if you minimize the importance of it, there's the week before it's the last week. What I really wanted to say, again, I think this is all going to be historically looked on as something amazing that this was a problem. There's no question in my mind that whether you argue climate change or global warming, what is happening are we are having erratic weather. I can say that as a farmer who's been at it for 70 years. I can also say, trained as a forester, it is amazing that the state of Connecticut, if nothing else, we really grow trees. And we are becoming a state. If you look back 80 years ago, there weren't nearly as many big trees. And they're getting bigger. So what does this have to do with it? Well, Peter mentioned that he didn't think the sky was going to fall, but big old trees will fall. The likelihood of districts, especially the rural districts, but any district, there's going to be an increased propensity with the idea of safety to have school canceled for weather events. But the other thing that's happened, and our previous agenda item, with technology, I predict within a decade, as more and more districts are really up to even degrees of sophistication we might not imagine here, that it'll become less stressful, and there may not be, if the weather is severe, the school day may carry on through technology. And I predict in 10 years we'll be looking back at 2018 and say, wow, they were arguing about one day or whatever. So, food for thought.
I don't think that the conversation we've been having has really been around an argument about whether or not we have 180 days of school. I think it's just an acknowledgement that we're having this long conversation about one day. But I have a question in terms of looking forward. I honestly can't remember whether it was the Richfield or Danbury documents, but in one of them I had read that the original last day of school was June 22nd, which just made me think, what was the first day of school? Yeah. And so, at least from the districts that I've been, we've started, before Labor Day, and the last day of school is early June. So there's plenty of time to make up for all the radical weather events that we're seeing, seemingly or perceptually, having more and more of. So I think that's my question is, as we're looking forward and avoiding these conversations, is there something that can be done? I would imagine that there is, in moving the day up. I just don't know what their first day of school was anyhow.
Do you happen to know what the first day was?
I don't know what the first day was, but most of the school districts started before Labor Day. Most of them do.
Dr. Pascarelli.
Yeah.
He has his hand up.
The sky isn't falling, as I was. It was after Labor Day because we had construction projects. We normally started before to avoid that time.
And that would be for
That would be for Danbury. For Richfield,
I don't know about Richfield.
yeah, it might be different. But, I think very often what happens is that during the course of the year, you have a schedule that was set by the board, and families rely on that schedule. So they're expecting a spring break, they're expecting a long weekend maybe in February, and they have plans for that time. And it's very difficult for staff, teachers, custodians, and so on, and the families whose children attend those schools to change those plans. And so there's a lot of pressure to not add on during the school year and then add on at the end. And then when you have an occurrence that actually happens at the very end of the year, that creates a lot more conflict and disruption.
Right.
I do want to just add, though, to the fundamental question, the deep question of could a school district start earlier? The answer is yes, legally. Yeah, the Commissioner's exactly right. I mean, legally, the school year starts July 1st. So, and we could, we can do a little anecdotal asking around of when school districts start their years, but you could start earlier. I do want to, though,
We
note.
actually collect the calendars.
So,
in the communications office, we collect the calendars, and as you may remember, about 7 years ago, a statute passed to establish a regional school calendar. That was a lot of effort, on the part of the RESCs to coordinate that work. And it produced 6 agreed-upon regional school calendars, 5 that started after Labor Day, 5 that started before Labor Day, 1 that started after. Even when that was first put into effect, there were still some districts that didn't abide by their RESC region calendar, and the penalty is so tiny, it was obviously not a major factor for them. Additionally, all they were really fixing through all of that effort was regional start dates, because it doesn't snow uniformly in Connecticut, even though we're a small state. So, for instance, I'm thinking about Waterbury with its hills. They need to fall off more because of the ice and the ups and downs and things like that. Certain districts really have struggles when the weather is poor. Others have fewer struggles. Some, you know, so it's really, I live in a district that called off 6 times more than a neighboring district I drive through on my way here. So, you know, it's very unique because maybe it's a large geographic area, or maybe their bus contract is different. So if there have been efforts to try to standardize this, they're difficult, I think, and we do keep track of the school calendars, and certainly in our engagement with districts, which the legal office, I have to give the legal office kudos, they've been dealing with this with many districts. These are the 2 that really can't satisfy the law without your help. The others, you know, we've talked to them about things like, have you thought about starting school earlier? You know, things like that.
You know, this has been a very interesting conversation, but I'm thinking about Terry's comments about 10 years down the road. School may be canceled, but we're going to still conduct school because we're going to do it via computers. But I'm really interested in Eric's comments because, and it kind of ties into Bob's, you know, how many days, we're talking about 180 days that the school is open. I think we should be more concerned about the number of days that students are sitting in the seats. And, you know, if we're talking about 180 days, 10% of that would be 162 days, and that's chronically absent. Let's kick that number up to 172, okay? And if the kid is in that seat for 172 days, is that enough? Nobody's going to be there 180 days, or, you know, there is no student probably. I mean, you could probably count on one hand how many students are there 180 days. And which ties into Samaya's comments about the last 10 days of the school year. Of course, as a former educator, you don't want to hear that either, because, you know, we're teaching right up until the last minute. But, you know, there's a lot to be considered here.
Let me share something with you, because I was just in Puerto Rico last month, sent by the accrediting agency, because higher education also has to meet a number of days for credit hours to operate and for financial aid, as Dr. Gates can confirm. And my assignment in Puerto Rico was to confirm that the universities that were closed for about a month were operational and were meeting the credit hour time limits. Now, a lot of what has been mentioned happened. You know, they were closed for a month, they opened, and they did use technology. But even in technology, even in our distance education, in higher education, you have to confirm contact hours. You have to confirm that the student is there. You have to confirm that there's help desk. So the notion that there's no people around is not necessarily true. Okay, so you are open in different ways. You may be open in the cloud, but you need to have a help desk. You need to have contact hours. You need to have a faculty available. So it's a very, again, it's not a notion that there is no place open. I sort of have a sense that, you know, what I saw in Puerto Rico was the notion that something that the students were saying here today, that a school is more than the face-to-face classroom. It's really a place where people come as a community, and it can be very meaningful to students that may have challenges to have a safety environment where they come and they teach. You have what the notion that was presented this morning about breakfast. You know, you close schools, no breakfast. You have, again, clubs, you have activities. So it's beyond the sitting in a classroom, and it goes to the engagement of the students. I was inspired by what I saw because the universities and the colleges became those things for those communities that were ravaged by a hurricane. You know, the destruction was immediate. So I was really inspired by that. And the notion that they saw the schools and the colleges at those centers. And I'm sure that in many instances there are many students that do see that building as that safety haven and that opportunity to be in a place that is safe for them, hopefully. So I am sort of a believer that the rule does make sense, and that although it's complicated, like everything we do, it still makes sense, even though we're in a time of technology, even though we're in times of complying with calendars and so on and so forth. Terry, you wanted to say something?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, I have two comments. One about how technology is like going to change the way that like getting seat time is going to be viewed, and then about earlier start times for the school year. I know that like there are a couple of occasions where like on snow days I still had to turn in assignments because it was turned in online, or like you'd still get homework or you get an online quiz, and so yeah, that's gonna be definitely interesting to see in the future. But then about earlier start times, I support the idea of starting school, like, because I know especially in high school with advanced placement courses that have the exam in May, what I constantly hear from my teachers and peers is that like other districts, they start much earlier and so they can get more content, because for everywhere the tests for APs or college courses like that are in May, but then because of all our snow days, we end up missing a lot and not getting the same amount of content in how many days before that exam as other districts. So I think definitely starting schools earlier.
Terry?
So this is just to continue Malia's point about starting earlier, but we did have this great presentation about the summer slide.
Right.
And I also predict the day will be coming when there'll be year-round school with appropriate breaks, and that would probably, but I know we still have the question here and now. I do want to be sure that it was not misunderstood. I'm not predicting that in lieu of the school as the physical place, the kids will be at home.
No, I know.
That's just an emergency.
I understand. I think the notion of technology, not being present and being whatever, it does allow you that, but it also requires a number of things that have to be in place. So I just wanted to, because we in higher education have that experience.
One last thing. So in terms of the starting earlier piece, the districts that I've been in only start maybe 2 or 3 days before Labor Day.
Yeah,
So I'm not talking about going to the beginning of August or anything, because I know that would freak people out. But I had thought the entire state had moved to a time when there was no longer a February vacation, and that there was only an April vacation. And it was just a longer weekend for President's Day weekend, and then realized recently that that's not the case. So there are examples in the state where we live just fine by not having a February vacation and just a longer weekend, and only have an April vacation, and still have a June 9th as an original end of school year. So just wanted to clarify.
I do have one very quick closing comment, Madam Chair, if I can do that. I just want to be clear that the State Board of Education has two important responsibilities that have been mentioned. One is the 180-day requirement of the statutes. Another is chronic absenteeism. And I want to assure you that you're tackling both of those. You're tackling them both. And that's where Charlene Russell Tucker's work on chronic absence comes in. So I don't want that to be lost in the shuffle.
Are we ready to vote? So we're voting only for Richfield because we haven't done the other motion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
With energy, people. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Now I need a motion for Danbury.
So moved.
Second.
And do we need a discussion on Danbury? So then are we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Now, in the agenda, there's not listed a special action item that we'll now take. And it's really the fact that we have two wonderful board members that this is their last meeting. And we want to honor them with resolutions. So I've been charged with presenting on behalf of the board to our two students who have been so eloquent and so powerful in helping us in our discussions. And we are going to miss them. I want to wish them the best. So Commissioner, will you read the?
Sure.
And then I'm gonna ask Maria to read the other.
Whereas Section 10.1 of the Connecticut General Statutes provides for the appointment of 2 student members to the Connecticut State Board of Education, and whereas Governor Daniel P. Malloy appointed Javaria Shaw of Hampton to the State Board of Education for a 1-year term commencing July 20th, 2017, and whereas during her tenure, Ms. Shaw has served with distinction and has contributed greatly to the board's discussions of educational policy issues. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education extends to Javaria Shaw its appreciation for her commitment to educational excellence and equity in Connecticut public schools and best wishes for success in her future endeavors. We'll put you in the middle of Javaria.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maria, will you do the honors of the same time?
Sure, of course.
I'm gonna stand so.
All right. Whereas Section 10-1 of the Connecticut General Statutes provides for the appointment of 2 student members to the Connecticut State Board of Education, and whereas Governor Daniel P. Malloy appointed Samai Nguyen of West Hartford to the State Board of Education for a 1-year term commencing July 20th, 2017, and whereas during her tenure, Ms. Nguyen has served with distinction and has contributed greatly to the board's discussions of education policy issues. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education extends to Samai Nguyen its appreciation for her commitment to educational excellence and equity in Connecticut public schools and best wishes for success in her future endeavors. Here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. For these students, you need to know that we have another, something else in addition. We do have a card that everybody's signing in secretly, so you wouldn't know, with a gift card, so you can go to college and spend some money at Target. So you're going to get the cards after we all finish signing it. But we want to really wish you a lot of success. We want you to come back and let us know how you're doing. And above all, we want to thank you for bringing the students' voice to this work and for reminding us always what we're here for. So thank you so much. I'm going to now declare a lunch recess, half an hour. Everybody's okay with that? No opposition. So thank you so much, and we'll come back in about 1 o'clock. Thank you. Call back the meeting to order. And the first item pending is the report of the chair. As you know, I'm not Alan Taylor, but but Alan did not have any items to report. I do want to say two things, and one of them has to do with Bill Davenport. So I was sort of waiting for him to come back because he invited Terry and me to go to the Woodbury banquet for the CFF. And we had a wonderful experience at the banquet. It's the first time that I go. And it was just very rewarding to see the leadership of the students. And then he invited me also to go to the conference, the CFF conference last Saturday at E.O. Smith High School. So that was very rewarding and wonderful to see what the students do and how they are organized and so on and so forth. So, Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Lopez. So you have my written report, and it was a very busy month, as you can see. We finished up with the legislative session, and there's always so much to do and we're still in the phase where we're waiting to see what gets signed into law and then work on our implementation plan. So any individual questions you have about the fate of various bills, things like that, please contact Laura directly, and she will be happy to talk to you on that. In addition to the written report, I just want to highlight a couple of things from this month. I want to give a little shout out to Dr. Barzi and her team. We were awarded in the last month a Troops to Teachers grant in Connecticut for the first time, I think, in Connecticut for, what is it, 1.2 or $1.2 million over 5 years that will aid in the efforts that Sarah and her team have been doing to engage veterans in order to encourage them to have a second career in education. And this is important for all kinds of reasons. One is we have a large number, thousands of veterans that will be returning to Connecticut with education and skills that they've acquired in the military. And we would like to find ways to get them into our classrooms and work with our kids. Often these veterans come with training in the STEM fields, so it can really help us in a shortage area and an area that's tied to helping our kids prepare for their careers or get career interests. So we're really excited about that. It's also an important part of our minority teacher recruitment efforts because the military, all the branches, are much more diverse than education is. So it's a way of also tapping into a more diverse workforce and encouraging them toward a second career in the best job that there is, in teaching or leading. So we're very thankful. Congratulations, Sarah. A lot of skeptics, I think, would have betted, or maybe did, bet against our team, but they prevailed, and they did a really hard work to do that. And we were able to announce that with the governor in Middletown. Was it just last week or the week before? The week before. So that's exciting.
How many years has it been?
5 years.
Oh, wonderful.
And
wonderful.
The team's already been doing a tremendous amount of work even with no money, so imagine what they can do with little money, I also wanted to mention that our own Charlene Russell Tucker was honored as a champion by the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and Partners for Healthy Change, also 2 separate awards. The other is a Partner for Healthy Change Award at the New Haven Public Schools 4th Annual Health and Wellness Summit. So one was on the national stage, one here in Connecticut. Being from Connecticut, we think Connecticut's kind of the even more important one, but they're both super important and wonderful awards, and it's great to see you getting the recognition you deserve, Charlene. And also, last week was like award week. Also last week, Ellen Cohn, our Deputy Commissioner, was awarded the Policy Change Award from the Connecticut Association of Latino Administrators and Supervisors, CALIS. So congratulations for all your hard work. There, I'm sure, were many different things that led them to select Ellen as their Policy Change Award, but you may know that Ellen advocated for accommodations for our English learners on our College Board assessments that no one in the rest of the country was getting at the time. And she paved the way for our English learners to be able to have the accommodations they need to show what they know without being encumbered by the language barrier. So that's exciting. So we have and it's just so fun to be able to tell you all that stuff about staff. last week I also I get to do so many things in representing the board and department. I got to do something that I'm still smiling about, which is Aaron Sadler invited me to the Merit and Scholars dinner. And many districts do different things to honor the kids that are, sort of excelling and doing amazing things. This way of doing it, I thought was very special, and I just wanted to share with the board that the students who were being honored as being one of the top 10 students in each of the 2 high schools got to invite someone who was influential to them in elementary school, so an elementary teacher, a middle school teacher, and a high school teacher, to be with them present at the event. So, besides, of course, their parents and family and things like that, and siblings. And I was touched. We were sitting with a group that included a school resource officer from a middle school who had been invited by one of the students, that was the person who had made the difference for him. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much. We all need those special student moments to keep us going. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one more thing. Well, we were noticed yesterday, and I wanted to share with the board, because a lot of this is due to your efforts and how you've pushed us, that we were awarded a distinction from the Office of State Ethics. So we received a certificate for distinction from the Office of State Ethics, and that is related to both filing of the required ethical statements by everybody who's required to, and also for our plan of ethics improvements. So we are proud, and our state ethics officer is Kim Barberi. I did ask her to come down here so I could present her the certificate and recognize her. No, she's not here because she would not. She was shy and had too much work to do. So, so we will just recognize her in her absence.
Thank you so much. Bill, while you were out, it was my turn to report, and I just mentioned I want you to be aware the invitation you extended Terry and me to go to the banquet with the CFF chapter banquet, and also to the conference, and how much I enjoy both events and seeing the students, their leadership, and all they know, and their presence, and the work that is being done by that group. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And then financial matters is?
Kathy needed to leave, and the good news is we have a budget. So we are in the second year of a biennial budget. There needed to be budget adjustments, and the legislature did solve that before they adjourned. So we do have direction. We don't have as much direction as we do normally, because we're still working under the biennial budget that was passed last Halloween without budget notes, but we have pretty good direction on what we're supposed to do with the money, and while there were some difficult cuts, there were also some areas where there was a restoration of funding. So there was a little bit of money restored to the talent line item. We hope it'll be enough to keep TEAM, which is our induction program, going. We lost, I think, over $5 million in our technical high school system, which is hard to imagine how we will help them absorb that. It seems impossible to us. On the good news side, we got more funding for vocational agricultural education. So, we wanted the more money for the VOAG, but we didn't want it to be from the technical schools, so we got to get the message out there that all of these models need their support.
Thank you for that. The next item is the consent agenda, so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Before we move for a vote, is there any item that you want to remove, anything? So you're ready to vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Thank you. And then I think the next item is the committee report. If I can go to that page. I think, I know, Joe, your committee has met, you met today?
Yeah, we met this morning, and the meeting got off to a rocky start because Dr. Barzi forgot her glasses and was given the wrong report for like 20 minutes. But then she got her glasses and we regrouped. So the Mandarin Chinese program, it's on the consent agenda, and somebody spoke in the public comments on it, so that went very well. Laura gave 2 key legislative updates on the department bills and the minority teacher recruitment. we had a little extra time, so I opened it up to the committee with some meetings left over before the board changes and what have you. And we had a very good conversation. Some of it carried over to our luncheon meeting, but I just thought take 1 second. Some of the topics that members felt would be prudent to discuss. Safety, that was brought up by our students. Don, who mentioned it again at lunch, some of the athletic issues that are happening in the state. I had an issue on guidance counselors. You know, as we've transitioned out of shop classes, how does guidance recognize skill sets? Aaron had a follow-up topic on the governance councils. And then there was a whole conversation that Bill and Terry went into on technical education and as it relates to choice programs. So, you know, some of what happens in our retreat may end up coming back through policy and legislation, but it was a very good meeting.
Thank you. Bob?
It's just a couple things. One is the legislature did delay the separation of the technical high school system from the Department of Education for a year, which is much appreciated, so that we don't have the funding to do it anyways, because there's going to be more people in the central staff, which means that the central office staff, so that will give us a little bit of wiggle room this year with some of those funds. We, as the commissioner mentioned, our funding was pretty severely down from this coming year from what it had been historically. So we're still going to have to keep over 100 vacancies, if not close to 190 vacancies. The superintendent is working on, you know, how to go through and match as closely as possible the needs of the students and the staff that we do have, and which vacancies we can fill and which ones we can't. If we do get the money that we hope that we will get from the state to help with some of the CVAC implementation, that will help us to some extent, but it's still going to be a very difficult, rough year. One of the things we're going to be talking about at our meeting this month is some work with Electric Boat and the Board of Regents and the Eastern Workforce Board to open up a advanced manufacturing program in Carasso that would have both adults with Three Rivers as well as high school students there, and potentially in replace of another shop there, which will help with the electric boat issues and the contribution to the workforce development in the state. Those are the main issues. It's still money.
Thank you. Gary?
It just occurred to me, are there, maybe I missed the mailing, for us to sign up to attend graduations in technical high school?
You did get one out. Yeah,
Diane Curtis.
Yeah.
Check with Diane.
Thank you for.
Thank you, Commissioner. I thought I did.
Well, I don't think I missed it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
received it, so I think we can check in with Diane
Oh.
Curtis.
Bob, I appreciate you getting the minutes of your meeting, so I think that's very helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you. And Maria Nasky, you want to say something about?
Sure. So I participated in my first call with NASB's governance affairs committee. So basically they just gave a really brief update about the fiscal 19 budget. Not a whole lot for them to actually give too much update on as the wrap up was continuing through July 4th when they go into recess, but then mentioned that there is a president's rescission package that is apparently not typical to happen, but that's the current administration. And also talked about the FCC and a conversation bill around supporting sort of the wireless network in places that I think is less of an issue here in Connecticut. An update on ESSA plans across the country. Let us know about a bill, an opioid bill in the health committee. and then just gave an update about the financial literacy discussion that they were having with states, just around what different states are doing to promote financial literacy in their states. So not a lot of detail or depth, but that's what the discussion was. Next call is this Monday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we adjourn, I want to again thank our students for serving on the board and for reminding us every time why we're here. And I wish you a lot of success, and don't forget us. I mean, when I'm all in the nursing home, come and see me. I also want to thank the commissioner and the staff. We know how hard they work and how much effort they put into everything that is discussed in this meeting. So we're very thankful. And finally, I want to thank the cameraman for being here, for ensuring that we look younger than we are and with less pounds. So thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a wonderful summer, and we'll see you in August. Thank you.